everybody. Welcome back to Movie Reel. I'm Kevin Tracy.
And I am Samantha Tomlinson. And what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about one of my all-time favorite movies from the 90s, The Mummy from 1999, starring Brendan Fraser. That's right, The Mummy.
Yeah,
Not that
this.
Tom Cruise ripoff.
Oh my god. That movie, the Tom Cruise mummy. The thing is, from the trailer, I knew it was going to be a piece of shit. And I remember, especially when they exported the trailer wrong and it was released and the sound didn't export right. And
Yeah, the that's
if you
right. I
haven't
forgot about
if
that.
you haven't seen that, it will I mean, I don't know if the actual that version of the trailer is still there, but there's like people's reactions to it that should be still up. There's one in particular I really like. It's super funny. Um yeah,
Yeah,
that
I totally
one
forgot about that.
that yep, that yeah, that movie could have been could have been like, I don't think I would have loved it more than this one. I'm like with you. This is probably one of my favorite movies. This or the
Yeah.
second one, I go back and forth between which I like more. I think this one maybe a tiny bit more, but uh yeah, that one could have been as good as this, and they did it wrong.
It had so much potential
It
and
had
just
yeah,
completely squandered it.
because they were shoving the whole trying to bring back all these monster movies and digging into the archives, like the whole dark universe. They were shoving that down our throats, like the
Yeah.
first, just by the logo. The movie hadn't even started yet and they were just hammering it in.
It's
and
like it's like welcome to the dark universe.
and yeah, it had so much potential, and I actually really loved the premise. I thought the premise was great. It was just everything else, which really shows how bad it is, the fact that the premise was not the issue. It was just
Okay.
executed poorly. But let's get to the good mummy movie.
Yeah, but before that, I actually have a really funny story about the Tom Cruise Mummy movie.
Oh.
So uh, you and we saw that in theaters and we talked about it on our radio show back when we still did that in Chico on Movie Reel before we did this Movie
Hmm.
Reel. But my mom, she had never seen it before, and it just happened to be on TV the other night, and it was probably like 2 nights ago. So I recorded it and I watched it with her, and probably a good 20 minutes into this movie, and I've never seen her this like like mad about a movie before because of not because of like the story itself, but because of Tom Cruise and not just the actor, his character, everything that he does basically just causes every bad thing that happens in this movie, like the death of his friend, the moment releasing, him being cursed. Everything is a direct result of his selfish actions, and he does really nothing to remedy that other than being more selfish to save himself. Everything is a direct cause of his selfishness because he's basically a grave robber. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh wow, okay, that's I knew he was like bad, but it's like it had been a while since I seen it. It's like, oh wow, I forgot how garbage of a character Tom Cruise had.
There was I
But
remember,
it was just
yeah.
hilarious watching that movie, and it's like with her because it got to a point where she was just rooting for the mummy. It's like she's like
Oh,
what, and the part where Russell Crowe reveals that he's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I could actually hear her eyes rolling in the back of her head. It
it
was
wasn't even that
the most ridiculous thing.
it wasn't even that the reveal. It was that it could have been hinted at. Like, I mean, the fact that his name is Dr. Jekyll, that should have been enough. But no, they had to show him start transforming, and then Tom Cruise is witnessing this, and then we just move right along. And I'm like, are we just forgetting about that? What the hell? The whole movie was just, it was just so, yeah, so shitty. And it could have been, it could have been way better. And yeah, it has so much potential. But to me,
Yeah.
that's the Tom Cruise mummy, and this is the mummy. I mean, this is actually a remake
This
of
is the
the
yeah,
of the
the original one from like
1920, I want to say 23. It's in the 20s, because this movie is set in the 20s and they were kind of trying to sort of pay homage to that movie.
Well, I think the original movie came out in like the mid to late 30s
Or
actually, and
20s and 30s,
it
yeah.
just happened to be set during the 20s because that was kind of like whenever there was a very significant time period in like the 20s where like everybody just loved Egyptian stuff, and that was like
What?
mostly around the
Yeah.
time when
Oh,
King Tutankhamun's tomb had been discovered, and pretty much everybody who was anybody was just buying or straight up looting and stealing Egyptian artifacts and even whole mummies. There was even a thing in like London high society where they would have mummy unwrapping parties where they would just take a mummy and then just unravel it, and that was just something that like the extremely wealthy would do because they just loved
ew.
Egyptian stuff so much.
That's a person.
Yeah, but it's
I
yeah,
would get it
it
if
was
it was
weird.
for, historical, scientific, or even like anthropological purposes, but for like a social event that seems very
Yeah, it was
disrespectful. That's a human being.
yeah, no, it was just like a very like bougie, like rich kind of thing. It's like, oh, I'm so rich, I can afford a mummy. It was just kind of like
Yeah.
bragging rights,
Yeah. Uh,
which I can kind of understand, but yeah, at the same time, it's like that's a weird flex, but okay.
yeah, there was a period of time where a lot of a lot of tombs and pharaohs and places were just being rediscovered in the
Yeah,
deserts of Egypt. Um,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah,
actually,
and 1932 was when the original movie
oh,
came
okay,
out.
okay,
Yeah,
and even in like our to the characters, so Evelyn and Jonathan, they're originally they were supposed to be linked to there were so I can't remember his whole name, but it's something Carter. He's the one that discovered King Tut's tomb, and he had Lord uh, Carnarvon with him, and his wife was like Lady Evelyn. And the only obviously this all got changed, but the only evidence of that is in the movie. Evie says to Rick, like, my father was a famous explorer, and my mother,
yeah.
that obviously all
It's
got
only
changed around.
it's only like mentioned like briefly through dialogue
It's
and like
it's
during like the library scene of like, oh yeah, this is the only reason I put up with you is because your parents were like our like best benefactors of this museum.
yeah, it's not their background, why they're in for well, not in the movie their last name's Carnahan, but their why the Carnahans are in Egypt and their love of it, especially Evie's, makes a lot of sense. um I was watching this, and the more even with the second one, I was realizing we don't really know anything about Rick. He When we meet him, he's with the French Foreign Legion,
Yep.
fighting a war, which is a perfect way for us to introduce to this character.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even really a war. It was just
A
pretty much
battle
just like
or
a random,
something. Yeah.
yeah, it was just like a random raiding party when they were in Hamunaptra,
Yeah.
where they just his entire garrison just like, let's go see if we can find this place. Like they
Yeah,
weren't
and
even ordered or
yeah.
anything. Like this wasn't like an official like on the books like encampment or anything. It was
Yeah.
just let's just see if we can find this. And they all broke orders and just like unanimously decided like let's march through this desert, find this place. All right, we found it. This place sucks. We're all getting slaughtered here.
Yeah, it doesn't go into a ton of detail. He does say like when he's leading them, he's like, "It's there. I've been there. I promise you, I've been there. We were ordered to go. Like it's there, and he knows it. But there's not a whole ton of explanation on why, other than the fact that his superior ordered them to.
Yeah. It
But
no,
yeah,
no no he said that like they marched there without orders. They
yeah,
marched through Libya and Syria to go there.
yeah, yeah,
It's like okay, that's commitment, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. So this movie came out May 7th, 1999. And it was directed by Steven Sommers, and it starts
Woo.
Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, John Hannah, Obed Fair, and Arnold Vosloo is the mummy, the high
Imhotep.
priest Emotep. The movie was so successful that the morning after the movie came out, Universal called the director and said, "We need another one."
Yeah.
And it went on to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Sound. Didn't win. The when they put in a ride at Universal Studios, it was so popular. Like the line, and in LA and Florida, the line was just so long. And it has been. I've only been to Universal Studios once, and I remember this was the one ride I really wanted to do. And honestly, I did not think it was that great. But I don't know. Maybe if I went on
It
again,
was
it'd
a
be
really fun
different.
ride.
I feel like it was just
Yeah,
too short of a ride.
I mean, it's a fairly fast-paced like roller coaster, so I wasn't disappointed. It was really fun. It was kind of like, got like this like haunted house kind of vibe to it, which I really
I
liked.
just remember it was
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of
I've only been once too,
yeah.
and that was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. So it might have changed since I've gone. I honestly don't know.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah, it was very fun.
that's funny. I went yeah, I was like I think going into my like senior year of high school. It was like yeah, like 7 6 7 years ago. Same. Um
Oh, whoa, we were in the same park at the same
that would have
time.
been funny. That would have been really what month? If you do you remember? If you remember. Yeah.
I have no idea. It was summer
Yeah.
of '89. I have
It's
no
so pretty nice.
idea.
Um and this movie was so it had audiences gave it on Rotten Tomatoes. So critics gave it a 60%, audiences gave it a 75%. And I'm pretty I think I'm okay with that rating. I do think I we both obviously really love this movie. It's more I feel like as opposed to the plot, there's more of these tiny details that the way the story is told, and it's not rushed or anything, but it is a fast paced, action adventure movie. And there's a lot of these
Yeah.
details where I realize watching it back, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't really make sense. Or how did he get this thing? Like I feel like there's um a couple of those kind of moments that for me I'm more like I was actually going back trying to like see if there wasn't it like but I'll get there in a second. Um
Yeah, there was actually like I I remember trying to do this like a couple times when watching it because I felt like I was either missing something or it like I blinked and I missed it kind of thing because earlier on in the movie they says like, oh, if he ever gets resurrected he will bring about the 10 plagues of Egypt. And after a while you see like Jonathan like counting and it's like, oh, this is my favorite plague, like boils and sores, and it's like, and all the water will turn red as if it were blood. And it's like after a while I like tried counting everything that I guess counted as a plague, and even if I just counted like some of the stuff that may not necessarily count, like him just turning into a sandstorm, I was like, all right, I only got to 8. What were the other
Wait,
two?
8.
I
I can wait, so
I
there's yeah, everything bled, the like
yeah
fire rains from the
yeah.
sky, everything
So
is
yeah,
dark.
it's yeah. At first, yeah, when he first shows up, like immediately after he gets resurrected, a swarm of locusts show
That's
up.
one.
That then he turns all the water to blood.
2.
Fire fire rains from the sky.
Yeah.
Uh, he eclipses the sky.
Yeah.
Then he just shoots a bunch of flies out of his mouth, so I guess that counts as 5.
Or 1.5 because we already kind of did that
I don't
one.
know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
don't know.
noticed that
I felt
too.
like yeah, I felt like I needed to split hairs for some of them. Otherwise, there's no way I could have counted to 10. And even while doing that, I still couldn't get to 10.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. They say he'll bring about the 10 plagues, and they.
It's like,
I will
what were the
say
10 plagues?
he maybe it's just it didn't get that far because isn't one of the plagues isn't this go back to the Bible, and that
Like some of
one of
them,
the plagues like the blood, and I think the like fires, I know that's part of it, but isn't the one of them like the first, if you have to smear, is it lamb's blood on your door, and
yeah,
the
yeah, that like
firstborn
that
son, it
was
could have been like, yeah, it didn't really play it off like it's a race. It kind of sort of towards the end was playing it like it's a race against time. But it was more just like, oh no, we got it. It wasn't when he first arrived. It wasn't like as much, even though they do say it. We're running out of time. They didn't
Yeah,
feel that sense of urgency other than we knew
like
it.
yeah. After he gets resurrected, it more or less just kind of feels like an intense game of keep away because he only gets full power once he like kills the guys
All have
who
the
like looted that all stole the canopic jars of Anaxinamu.
yeah.
Um, so which also I don't get why he would go after them and not the people who opened up his tomb, which was something I thought was
Because
kind of
they
weird.
wrote
Was like
because they're the ones
what?
that unintentionally woke him up and brought him back. And the Americans who are hilarious because they are just so overly American. Like they
Yeah,
basically
they're
are just
they're all
they basically
cowboys.
there's literally the western or like southern one. He had more of like a westerny accent. The western one, the one
Yeah.
with glasses, who was like, i.e., the air quotes the sensitive one. Like he was the one that wasn't intentionally getting into danger. I mean, or he wasn't like the every all the other ones were just like having fun shooting, and he was doing that too. But like for example, when they're fighting with Rick, Evie, and Jonathan about like a digging spot, and he sees that Evie has his tool set. He's like, "Hey, those are mine," and they put a gun to him. He's like, "I was mistaken." Like he's the one that's
Yeah, it's
not.
like perhaps I
Yeah,
was
he's not the
mistaken.
one that initially tries to start things. He's the
Yeah.
air quotes sensitive one. But yeah, they basically, and then there was just the other one. They basically just the one of they're just
Yeah.
practically not wearing like a red, white, and blue clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also want to point out the fourth guy that was kind of like in that group, the Egyptologist with the fez and like the monocle. The way that he is dressed is basically like a direct comparison to how Boris Karloff dressed for his character in The Mummy. He played the titular character, the Mummy, Imhotep, and he had a human disguise. I forget his actual name. I think he just called himself Prince Imhotep, and no one actually knew the name of the mummy. It's been years since I've seen the original, but the way he dressed was like almost identical to how the Egyptologist dressed in this movie, and I just thought it was a really cool, like most likely intentional Easter egg that
Probably.
they
That's
left there.
cool. I didn't know that. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
like it was mainly like the fez that
Yeah,
gave it
yeah.
away because like no one else like wears that. Like no one in this entire
Wait,
movie wears that, and
the
then the
curator guy that Evelyn works for wears that hat.
oh that's right, yeah
And
that's
then
right,
we find out he's part of the Magi though. That he's like I don't know. It's I didn't really think it
yeah
was. That's interesting. I didn't know. So I kind of thought that was just the style. I didn't really think that much of it. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
and also like I didn't think that when I kind of like did like a little bit more research into this movie, um a while back I learned that like the Magi were like actually a thing, but they weren't necessarily like these like sworn like super loyal like bodyguards. They were more or less just kind of mercenaries for hire that were just regularly employed by
Mm-hmm.
pharaohs. So it's not like it was like they're like a super like deep seated like very uh like tight knit like loyal group. They're pretty much just guns for hire back then that were just really badass for the most part,
Interesting. Interesting. I didn't know that.
which I just thought
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it's like I didn't think that they were actually real. It's like, oh, that's like a cool thing. Like that's a cool name. It's like sounds it has like it looks like it has like some like historical significance to something that existed in the past, and I'm kind of curious to see
Yeah.
what it was. And it's like, oh, it's actually what they were called. It's like that's actually really cool and a really cool like attention to detail.
Yeah, this is definitely you don't really need to know it's very set up. You don't need to know anything about ancient Egypt to
No,
like
not at all.
it if it's important, they supply the information. Um they so actually when we first so the movie starts and the narrator of this is uh Oded Fair, who plays the one of the Magi, Ardeth Bay, who
Uh,
I didn't realize
yep.
we never hear his name You don't know his name
We
until the
only
credits
we
and then the
only
sequel.
and yeah, yeah, literally that's the only time we ever hear his name.
And because
For a while I just called him like the main Magi. Like I didn't really know what to call him. He was just the
I didn't even
Magi.
think about that, but like, yeah, we don't know his name. And I feel like, unfortunately, it's just no one's. They're not. There wasn't really any issue of like, that guy they were with. It was just, if anything, you would have just said the Magi that they work with. Um, but when we start this movie, yeah, he's kind of narrating the beginning and it makes sense why he's narrating the beginning because he is of the Magi and their job, they're like the Pharaoh's bodyguards. They're descended from Pharaoh's bodyguards and they are guarding
Yeah,
Hamunaptra to prevent Imhotep from being risen. And the
yeah,
story starts in Thebes, which is this ancient Egypt, and Thebes, a city of the living, and the Imhotep, who's the high priest to the pharaoh, he's in a forbidden relationship with the pharaoh's uh, mistress or
mistress.
I don't know. They play it more in the sequel. They say she's like his fiance or like she's gonna be his like wife.
Yeah, yeah, his like bride to
Yeah,
be is, which I was kind of like a weird thing. I guess she was just like his mistress, and like mistress was just like her like
yeah,
placeholder like title until then.
yeah,
Like I guess they didn't really like have like a word for fiance, so it's like yeah, she's like with him, but they're not married. So I guess mistress was like the official title.
yeah,
That's like the only thing I can think of that would kind of constitute that like
yeah.
making as much sense as
She is
possible.
with she is with the
Um,
pharaoh, and no one is allowed to touch her. And I gotta say, so the actress is Patricia Velasquez, and her costume is a loincloth, a little bit of jewelry, but mostly body paint. And it apparently took like 4 hours
yeah,
to do, which sounds like a long time.
yeah, and it
It
looks
does. It looks
amazing.
incredible. And I didn't even notice like it's on her legs too. And I'm like, I've never seen that.
Yeah,
Because it looks like very from if you kind of are like from far away, it looks like that's cloth. But no, it's like it looks incredible. But I realized though 4 hours,
yeah,
that is a long time. But hearing about like since then we've had movies like Deadpool or like Guardians of the Galaxy where a lot of the makeup a lot of these people have to wear takes
or How the Grinch Stole
that a
Christmas.
lot of this has to take like hours and hours. So I'm like 4 hours sounds like
Yeah,
nothing. Um
yeah. I also quickly want to point out in like the beginning of the narration, you kind of see like this really cool like panning shot of like the Sphinx and the pyramids of Egypt and kind of like all the people kind of like running around. Um, this was all CG, and this was in like 1999. So this was back when like CG was brand new. Like this was kind of like like more or less around the time Jurassic Park came out and released kind of like the industry standard for CG, and that panning shot of just them doing all the like locations of like the pyramids and stuff, that took them
mhm.
months of post production after the movie was finished. I want to say it took them like 4 or 5 months just to get that shot to get it to look right, and it looks amazing. Like there are a couple times where like the CG looks kind of hokey and goofy in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you see like Brendan Fraser like shadow fighting like a couple mummies that you can tell are clearly not there, but then there are times where it's like that looks
The
amazing, like the
design.
him turning into the mummy and just him turning into like the sandstorm and seeing his face and his hands in it. It's like that looks amazing. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, I did notice the CGI like in the beginning especially, the design is beautiful. Like it looks good. But I did notice that when like there's the part where you see like when we're first introduced to Imhotep and he's like looking out at everything, that's very obviously a green screen. It is a really beautiful
Yeah,
background, but I was like, yeah, that's because he looked real and that didn't. But it wasn't like, I was like, again, this is not a recent movie, so I'm like, whatever. But I did
yeah.
miss that.
I mean, it
Yeah,
still
yeah,
looks
yeah,
really
yeah.
good,
I've seen
honestly.
more recent stuff that's worse. I'm like, I
Yeah, which is like which is kind of a shame that we're kind of like taking a step backwards technologically
Mhm.
of just throwing everything into a green screen and just hoping it looks good when most of the time now it just looks like a rubbery mess.
CGI is one of those weird
Like
things. It doesn't really matter what if it doesn't look good, then don't.
people
Yeah,
notice
exactly.
immediately.
And my kind of rule for it is if it looks bad within like a couple of years once said when movie has come out, that means it was never very good to begin with. And if it looks decent after like 10 years, then that's like it still looks pretty decent, then to me that means it's really really good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and this was kind of like something that I kind of like picked up a little bit from watching the Corridor Digital series, which you guys need to subscribe to them. They are phenomenal. The VFX Artist React series, they pretty much kind of talk about like how um, if CGI in a movie is bad, people notice it immediately, but when CGI is good, people almost don't notice it, which is like there are times where like there are full characters in a scene that are completely CG and people can't tell the difference, and it's like that is good CG when people don't notice how good it is and they think it's real. That's how you know that you've done a good job. And there are a couple moments in this, especially with like the sand effects. I think they did really well because particle effects I feel like is kind of hit or miss on how good you can make it. Like water, you can either make that look really good or really fake and just kind of make it look like a
mhm.
congealed mess. And sand would probably kind of have like a similar effect. And whenever they kind of did like the sandstorm, like the huge sand like wall chasing them, that looked really good. And you can kind of see like the ripple effects when like the bullets are passing through it when they're shooting it, and it just looked amazing.
Mhm. Yeah. That's cool. Um and yeah, I agree. Like it's one of the, yeah, like I said it's one of those things. If it doesn't, if you can't do it right, don't do it. And I've seen movies where it's like it's just unnecessary, and I know that maybe it was like for the time they wanted to because it was cool, but it doesn't hold up. Which I'm like, you shouldn't have just
Yeah,
like you didn't really need to do it. You could have just. Um,
exactly.
but yeah, so this uh so yeah, Emotep is in a relationship with the Noxuna Moon, and because and so they say like he's not, no one's supposed to touch her, and I always kind of assumed, oh, the whole like the character having all this makeup is a way to make it clear that no one can touch her, because if someone smears her body paint, that means they've been touching her and they're not allowed to touch her. And Emotep is like has his hand on her arm and like it messes it up, and this is how the Pharaoh sees like someone's touched you. And I was like, they've been in this, how long have they been in this relationship? He has to know that he can't touch her, or that if he touches her, like puts
I
his hand on her arm like that, he's gonna smear it and someone's gonna notice. It wasn't a big deal, but I'm like, that seems kind of like a uh rookie mistake.
and also just how does he not know that she didn't accidentally
Oh
smudge it
yeah.
herself?
I fell.
Like if she accidentally like it's like, oh, like my arm was itchy. It's like, ah, crap, I smudged my my forbidden paint. Now now he's gonna think that
Yeah.
I've done something bad.
She just
It
starts
just
rubbing paint on the
like there's no
walls. Like, oh, I tripped. I bumped into the wall. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, sorry, my arm was itchy. I got bit by a locust. That's a problem here. We got those plagues,
And
man.
yeah, those plagues, man. Yeah. Uh
Those plagues, man, they're
uh
wild.
the and then so the Pharaoh walks in, he sees Anoxenmoon's body paint has been messed up, and then Emotep shows up with like a sword, a dagger, whatever. Then Anoxenmoon kills him, and then the Pharaoh, the Magi,
Yeah, they just take
and
turns stabbing
this
the hell out
guy,
of
the
them.
actor that's playing the Pharaoh, he is like giving it all he's got. He's just like his arms extended. It's very like theatrical. Like, oh, you're killing. Like it's very dramatic. And the Magi show up, and I kind of love when they show up. The way they're walking and the way they're wearing like headpieces that are kind of moving with their steps, and like the way they're holding their weapons, it just looked very
Yeah,
it was kind of funny
intimidating.
because it was like it looked like intimidating, but like it also looked like just the way they were walking, like with their head shaking, it was very like contemporary,
Yeah,
and I thought it was kind of funny.
like honestly, like they're like the first like couple shots of like them like busting through the doors after like Imhotep's priest kind of like barred it and
Yeah.
like get him out of there. Um, they kind of just like walk in and just like, all right, if you like pause it, it just looks like, all right, this looks like the most intense like cover band
Yeah.
photo ever. It's like, all right, these guys are about to drop a new album really
So
soon.
yeah, exactly. So Moon kills herself because the only Emotep is the only one that can resurrect her because they're in love, I guess. And he and his priests go to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead, and he's beginning to resurrect her, and he does bring her back, but then the Magi intervene before he's able to complete the ritual, and all of them are mummified, and they're all given like the I don't know. Is it all of them or is it just Emotep that's given the?
it
It's just
it's
Emotep.
just Imhotep. All of Imhotep's priests get mummified alive, but he is
Hum,
given the
the
Hamundai, which is
worst
like
of
the
them.
un yeah, like the un like basically like the unforgivable curse. And it just, why would you give someone a curse that would allow them, if they are resurrected, when apparently resurrection is a thing if you
Thank
know what
you.
you're
This is what I
doing,
was
as
thinking.
as as displayed by as displayed by Imhotep. Like this is a very like apparently easy thing to do. You just need to read from this very specific book. It's like, why would you give this like condemned criminal who hates all of you and your entire like order and your way of
A
life
way out.
the
Yeah.
ability to resurrect, to like give him the power of like the 10 plagues of Egypt and basically make him immortal. It's like, why would you even do that? Just mummify him alive, throw some scarabs in it, and call it a day.
Yeah,
You don't
that
need to
was
go
what I
through
was
like this whole
thinking.
like
That's what I
elaborate
was
curse
thinking. I'm
thing.
like, that doesn't really make sense. So like, I the only thing I can think of is that yeah, it's a horrible thing to put someone through as they're being mummified, and I think the idea is more it's gonna be a horrible death, like in the afterlife, it's gonna be horrible. But yeah, it seems like you're doing all of this stuff, but there is a chance that if he does wake up, it didn't. Yeah, I agree. It didn't seem. It seemed unnecessary.
Yeah, seriously. It just, why would you, like, I get you want to punish him, but can't you
Just
just
regular
like,
kill him.
I don't know, like just do, yeah, just like regular kill him, or just do like a torture him to death or something. Like, I guess
That's
mummifying him alive,
horrifying.
like that's a fitting punishment, but
Yeah, he
why the
apparently the
curse?
actor Arnold Vosloo, he did not. I can only I can't imagine he did not like doing this scene.
Oh yeah, he said that he was like very
Yeah,
claustrophobic about
yeah.
getting wrapped up,
He, but
wasn't
it
it?
also he's being wrapped up in like bandages, and that I feel like I would be like I would have basically asked somebody like if I would be like I know that this is all fake, but just in the off chance that they are trying to kill me, will you intervene? Like I would want someone offset just to like another like a third party, because that does look that just like seemed that did look stressful, and he did I mean I know that he's being mummified, his character's being mummified alive, but it definitely looks stressful, and I can only I agree that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're all mummified, and if he wakes up, he'll bring the 10 plagues of Egypt, and it'll be horrible. And then we jump to it is 1923, Hamunaptra, and they have the French Foreign Legion, and it's their superior runs away as he sees all of these uh, men on horses with swords
Yeah,
coming at them,
and
and then
also like it's never explained like who these like men on horses are, like because they're
yeah,
clearly not magi.
no, yeah, and uh Brendan Fraser, I guess I guess he is the second in command, because when he runs away, his like he's got this like shitty rat sidekick, I guess, during this time, who's like an asshole,
Oh
who
yeah,
is throughout the movie,
Benny.
Benny.
Yeah, he's not a literal rat, folks. Although that would be adorable.
He is,
It's just he's just kind of like this sniveling, kind of like weaselly, cowardly type who's just going to do whatever he can to save his own skin.
and it's like, but it's clearly, yeah, and he like looks at him as like, I guess you're promoted, and um,
No. The
the
he
guy
was
runs
saying that
away.
yeah, the guy ran away. It's like he just got promoted, and that like that's why he ran away. He couldn't handle command.
Oh, I
Like
thought he was saying to
that was
Brendan
the
Fraser,
joke.
"You've been promoted because our superior left, and you're the second command." That's how I. Oh,
No, they're like both look at each other after seeing like the guy on horseback just like throw a sword and like run away, and it's like they both look at each other.
okay.
It's like what? And it's like Benny just shrugs his shoulders like he just got promoted. It's like
Oh,
eh,
okay, maybe that's what I don't know why. I think I've always heard that, and then this time for some reason that's not what I heard. Okay, whatever. Anyway,
yeah,
uh, they're fighting, and obviously his legion's being wiped out, and Benny, of course, runs inside and leaves O'Connell out there to die, and like Benny is just such, yeah, he's like this weak conniving little asshole the whole movie. And the thing is, Rick O'Connell, he is tough, and he he can be mean, but he is a good person. And
yeah.
even at the very, very end, he tries to help out Benny, and he can't. And I actually realized, I've noticed this before, he always tries to help everyone and get everyone to safety, but at the same time, he first is going to help the people he cares about, and then second, he's not going to put in extra effort if they're not even. So, like when they're trying to escape, Emotep takes Evie, and they're escaping through like a manhole cover, and
Yeah,
like
and he's trying to get everyone out.
and the curator guy's fighting. He's like, "Come on!" And he's not. He's like, "Okay, well, whatever." Like I feel like he did stop to help, and then he's like, he's not coming, so I'm just gonna go.
Yeah, he also did the same for like one of the workers
Americans.
after Imhotep. Yeah, no, one
Oh
of
yeah,
the
yeah.
just like the regular like diggers that
Oh
they
yeah, yeah.
hired.
The scarabs.
Yeah, they're like running from like a bunch of scarabs, and this like worker like falls over, and he like kind of like turns around and like takes like a couple steps towards him until he realizes that it's too late, and the scarabs have already swarmed and have
Yeah.
already ate him. And
Which
he does this like a couple more times. It's like yeah, he's just like a genuinely like good character who's trying to do what he can to save who he can. He just isn't always successful, which is
yeah,
yeah, that's a really cool character trait.
and I appreciate that, especially because he does clearly come from like some sort of military background. He understands that sometimes you can't save everybody. There's no point in feeling bad about it. He did what he could, as well as he makes the effort, and but if it's I don't know. I guess I really appreciated it. I found that very like refreshing, as opposed to, not that this is a bad trait, but usually it's they go over out of their way to save everybody, which is again not a
Yeah,
bad trait, and that's a trait that I have a ton of respect for. This is just a I feel like a little bit of a more human level trait,
yeah.
because I just found it again, and I'm not trying to shit on someone being overly loyal, because that's another trait that I always really love in heroes. I just really love his trait because it's very military style. Like he has a code and whatnot, but he can't always help everybody.
Yeah, and I also just really like the fact that they do like illustrate that he is doing what he can to save everyone, but at the same time showing that he isn't always successful. He is flawed because he isn't always there on time to
Mm-hmm.
save everyone. It's like that's a really cool trait that they do like just very subtly show that he is a flawed character by not being like the very best. Like you do see him like get beat up like a fair amount. He's able to take a punch though,
Yeah,
but he's able to dish it right back and just a little bit harder. Like when they're being attacked by the Magi on the barge, he gets like jumped by like one of the Magi and is just getting like wailed on for a while, and just at like the last minute he's able to just like break the like the chokehold that the Magi has on him and just starts going, just wailing on him, just headbutting him, and just flying all these fists at him, and just eventually like takes him down. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's really cool that he's able to just like he's able to like hold his own in a fight while at the same time get his ass kicked in a way that won't like hinder him in the fight later on.
Yeah. He is definitely a guy who has been through stuff, and he's just more like it's clear that he's not like a hero that's stumbled onto this. Like, and again, I'm not that he's been through this situation before, but he has a background that definitely comes in handy and supports what he does throughout the movie. And I want to bring up, so Brendan Fraser was, I've heard it's rumored, I've heard it's true, I don't know, but apparently Brendan Fraser so almost was not Rick O'Connell. I've heard Leonardo DiCaprio was almost Rick, and apparently, first of all, I'm no offense, I'm kind of glad it wasn't. It would have been a very different movie. But then again, I also kind of like
Yeah,
the idea because Leonardo DiCaprio didn't really do a lot of. He's never really done these kind of movies, so it would have been fun to see him in this element. But he also, by
yeah,
that point, by in like the '90s, he's still hardcore heartthrob. So I just think it would have been a
yeah,
very different movie.
yeah. I feel like it's also kind of hard, kind of picturing him doing some of the stunts that Brendan Fraser kind of does. Like you see him like give this movie his all. Like you see
He
him
gets
dolphin diving over
hanged.
pillars.
Yeah.
He almost dies on the
Yes.
set because his like support like system during like this like new scene like basically snap. Okay, so the way this happens, he's getting hanged in this prison because of reasons that are funny that they didn't explain. He
It's
just
just
wanted to have a good time.
he was just looking for a good time. That's
Yeah,
all we know.
that's literally the only reason this movie gives us. Like, yeah, apparently he had too good of a time, so they go to hang him, even though apparently he's only been in jail for a couple of days. Um, so they hang him, and the way this happened is they put like a back like harness behind him that was supposed to like support his weight when the noose dropped him so it wouldn't actually strangle him. So what happened was when he fell, the actual force of his body falling and then coming to a sudden stop snapped the basically like snapped the brace off from the actual noose, which but it prevented him from snapping his neck. But in the process, he was actually being hung to death, and it like severely like injured like his neck.
Holy
Um,
shit. I knew
but
that,
yeah,
like that
he
scene, but
yeah.
the brace didn't do its whole job, but if it wasn't there, he would have broken his neck.
Oh yeah,
Oh my
or
god.
at the very least, like severely injured his spine.
Holy shit. Oh
Um,
damn.
yeah, so it in a way it did like half of its job. But he fell like way too fast for the thing to actually support his weight coming to a sudden stop like that. So it snapped and he hung himself. I forget how long he was actually there because they just like, oh man, this is really good. He actually is like, it's like because they eventually cut him down after hanging him for like a couple of like I want to say like a couple of minutes, and he was unconscious. So they had
Yeah,
to like get like the on-site doctor to check him out, and it's like, oh, like when they actually confirmed that, it's like, oh shit, he actually has like bruising like on his neck. Like he was actually almost hung to death on our movie. We almost killed the actor.
Rachel Weisz said it was pretty. Yeah, she's like, yeah, he was not breathing. It was that's oh god, I can't even imagine witnessing that. Being like, yeah, wow, he's doing a great job. Oh no, no, he's actually being hung. He's being strangled right now. That is
Yeah.
damn. He got this role from the success of another movie that I grew up watching and love, George of the Jungle, which came out like 2 years before this. And I guess the director was looking for someone. He said he totally fit the bill of like the swashbuckling type of character, but he
Yeah.
he wanted someone that wasn't taking himself too seriously, because then he didn't think the audience would really go with. And I'm like, yeah, I never really thought about that. But yeah, he kind of is he's just barely giving it the right amount of seriousness. He's a Because in the beginning he's finding this all really hard to believe, and even it's not even until the first plague, where they're not the first plague, but when they're drinking the blood, does he fully realize, oh shit, this is
It,
actually.
yeah, it's like yeah, because for a
He
while,
sees
like
he
he kept
sees
saying
the
like,
because he shoots Emotep when he first sees him, but he's convinced he
yeah,
got him.
yeah, it's like I got him. Like no one can survive a shotgun shell at point blank range to the hip because he just kind of like shoots him like kind of like in like the sternum.
Yeah.
Um, and there was actually like one like funny fact that I kind of want to point out is when after they resurrect Imhotep and they all run to the tomb and they all kind of get separated, Imhotep like corners one of uh the Americans, and it's the guy with the glasses, and he removes his eyes and his tongue so he can see and speak because his tongue was cut out and his eyes have since been eaten and eroded after being trapped for 3,000 years. But when he first looks at Evie, since he stole the eyes from the guy with the worst eyesight, he thinks that he's seeing a Naxinamul. And I thought that was a really cool reason as to explain why this woman, who doesn't look like a Naxinamul at all, thinks that it's her because the eyes that he
Oh.
picked were the worst possible ones he could have gotten.
Oh my god, I didn't think about that. Oh my god, that is a really good point. I did not think about that at all.
Yeah. That's just like such a like a random and weird detail that I never really thought about until I was like, wait, so if he stole someone's eyes that were really poor eyesight, because he has like the classic like, oh, I dropped my glasses, I can't see anything. He has like the classic like
My
Velma Jinkies moment.
glasses. Yeah.
And so of course someone steps on his glasses and is like, oh, I can't see anything, so he's just kind of like feeling the walls to walk around. And then Imhotep stole his eyes. He has the same worst eyesight as that man, so naturally he's going to see what he thinks he's seeing, and it's, hey, there's this attractive woman with long black hair, like my girl. That's my girl. All right, that's my girl now. That's that. You can't change my mind now.
So, um I want to point this out because when we first, so he chooses Evie to be his sacrifice, his human sacrifice, so he can complete the ritual and bring Anaxunamun back. But
Yes.
what I realized, that means he had to have had a human sacrifice the first time around, which we don't see.
Yeah.
And he is about to, like, we see with the dagger, he barely brings Anoxinamu back. He has the dagger. He's like, ah! And then the Magi step in. And I'm like, so is he going to kill a person? Will kill a girl? We don't see
Yeah. We
this.
don't. There's no one else on the altar except for
So
Anaximals
it looks like he's
body.
about to
So it's
kill
like, wait, is
her.
he? So wait, he's gonna sacrifice her to resurrect her? Yeah, I didn't understand that either with the whole human sacrifice thing. I can understand like, oh, he's going to use Evie's body as
A
like
host.
the
I thought that
yeah,
for a
as or like
second, and I'm like,
or
no.
like the vessel
Yeah.
for her. But yeah, it made no sense.
I thought that for a second, and then I realized, yeah, that doesn't make sense because yeah, the first time he attempted this, it was her body, and she came back. Yeah, I'm assuming. Yeah, I would have. I want to say he has one, and we just didn't see it. But no, there's nowhere we see the whole room. There's no way we would have missed a person. Um, but
Yeah.
that was something I noticed, and that was one of those things that like I think I don't know if I've noticed that in the past or it was just this time through that I notice that. But anyway, so yeah, so okay, so Rick is literally about to be killed like executioner style from all these guys on horses about to kill him, and then they run away because they're on cursed land and they flip out, and Rick, and then the sand kind of just jumps out at him and he runs into the desert, and we see the Magi watching him, and they're gonna like, and they're like, no, we'll just let the desert kill him. And then 3 years later, when he travels back to Hamunaptra with Jonathan and Evie, this and the same Magi and Ardith Bay says,
on the same mountain
yeah,
looking
which
at
because
him.
that's where they're posted, fine. But they go, oh, he's this one's like strong-willed, or this one is whatever, and I'm like, how can you possibly see what he looks like? How can you possibly know that that's him? Even the
Yeah,
first
I
time,
I
well, the first time it was just, oh, we don't need to kill him. The desert's gonna kill him.
yeah, it was just like a random nobody,
But the second time, like, how can you possibly see
like an
him?
unarmed soldier.
And it was dark.
Like it
And
would make
it was dark too.
like it
Yeah,
yeah, like it would make sense if like you see like one of them like putting down like a spyglass or like binoculars or something.
yeah,
Like some like indication that they could like easily identify it even if we don't directly see them looking through
yeah.
it. But yeah, it made no sense on how he knew that it was the same character when they are
So
like
far away. They are
miles
miles
apart
away.
from each
Yeah,
other. Like there, that's like I can tell that there's a person on a camel on that sand dune over there. I can't tell who it is. I can't tell their gender. I can't tell their ethnicity. All I can see is that it is a person on a camel.
yeah.
So it's like how do you know that it is the exact same person?
And we then jump forward 3 years, and we're introduced to Evelyn, who's Rachel Weisz, and she's a librarian who really wants to. She wants to join the Bembridge Scholars, but they keep consistently turning her down because she doesn't have enough experience in the
She
field. And in the
yeah.
beginning of the next movie, she even says the Bembridge Scholars have been begging me to run the British Museum, and I'm like, "Aw, that's nice. You got your experience." But
Yeah, I'm on the up and
yeah,
up.
but this scene, she's putting books away, and she's on a ladder
I
in
love
this
this
in this
scene
in
so
this
much.
library, and she's trying to reach across. She's not gonna make it. Her arm is not long enough. The shelf is too far away. She's very high up on this ladder. It is not smart or safe. And she goes the ladder. She pushes the ladder actually straight up and lands on the bookcases, and they all come tumbling down domino style. And this was in one take because it would have taken forever to set this all back up.
I I heard that it was that they had to do it in two takes and it took like 18 hours to prep it again.
Wait, really? I thought it was. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they wanted it to be one take. I heard it was. It had to be one take because it would
Yeah,
have been such a bitch to start
yeah.
over.
Oh, and a funny thing about this is that there are a couple like shots where you see like the ladder standing straight up and the stunt double that they have for Evie doing that just to balance the ladder is a man
Oh,
wearing Evie's
I
clothes.
didn't know that. um, yeah, there's a part. I don't know if it's a stunt double, but when they're on the Nile, the boat, and they jump off, Rick jumps off, and he lands in the water. I'm pretty sure it's not him because it doesn't. I mean, it could be him. It just doesn't look like him. It's just for a second, but I'm like, I don't think that's Brendan Fraser's face. It's just for a second, but I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
And then
probably.
we meet Jonathan, who's
Jonathan.
Evie's brother, who's the drunk, and he's like he's tipsy when we meet him. I didn't know that he was always drunk in this scene. I just thought he was,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, no, he's
He's
super drunk. And this was also the last scene of the movie that or the yeah, this was the very last scene of the movie that they
oh really
filmed. Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that either. Um, but
Yeah.
this is when we meet him, and he's like he basically just he loves gold and treasure, and he has this key that has a map to Hamunaptra, and they show it to the curator, who we find out later, like we said, he's part of the Magi, so he doesn't of course want them to find Hamunaptra, but he's putting it closer and closer to a candle as if he's going to look at it, and then it catches on fire. And looking back, I'm like, it's like it's so
It
obvious he's trying to burn it.
it's so intentional and his like overacting of selling it just makes it so much better when you find out that he did do it on
Yeah,
purpose after you rewatch it because it's like oh my goodness like he just
yeah,
doesn't care that he just burned this like
yeah,
potentially priceless artifact.
yeah. And I guess
It's just
Jonathan has
like
done this before because he wants just, treasure, and he keeps bringing stuff that he thinks is going to be worth something. And then this time he actually brought something that's worth something. And he said that he found it on some dig, But then it's the next scene. There's because the map has been burned. They go to the person who had it before Jonathan, who Jonathan took it from, and it's Rick, and he's in jail. And so I guess he got arrested just after Jonathan took it from him. I
Yeah.
realize though it's not that crucial, but do you think we could have benefited from a scene where we see Rick finding this? Or because I'm guessing he had to have found it before the first scene we meet him in. He had to have
I
had it on his
assumed
person
that
by
it
that
was
point.
just I kind of just assumed like this was like the catalyst that had his entire garrison go there because like, hey, we found this map, like this thing has to be real, and that's what convinced an entire garrison to go without orders to see if they can find this place. I just assumed that he just like somehow managed to get it keep it like during the battle,
Okay,
and kept it
okay.
with him after leaving Hamunaptra.
Okay, because I was wondering, I'm like, if he has it, well, why does he have it? And okay, that's a good, I can accept that. That's acceptable.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they go. This is when we're first. Brendan Fraser and they all meet. Rick and Evie and Jonathan all meet, and he as the prison guy. I don't know the guy who runs the prison says like. I asked him why he's here, and he just said he was just looking for a good time. We have no idea why he's in jail, and he
Yeah, but it's such a
yeah,
funny
yeah,
line.
yeah. It's kind of perfect. We don't really need to know. But they they basically they don't know if he's aware of what he had. So they're trying, oh, we found your puzzle book and we've come to ask you about it. And he's like, oh no, you're here to ask me about Hominoptera. And they're like, wait, what? How do you know? And he's like, because that's where I found it. That's or actually he said that's where he found it. He was there. So it was just buried in the sand. That's what I didn't think.
Yeah, there's a yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I found the map to this place at the place where it tells you to go. Like that's a fun place to do. That's a fun place to find a
I mean, I
map.
get why the map would
Like
be there because they don't want people to find it.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
and it would also make sense that the key for like the books that are there would also be buried there as well.
yeah, as opposed to it being like a whole like a scavenger hunt. Like, I mean, it kind of turns into one, but it's there. It's just they gotta find it
Yeah,
at Habanoptera. But that was my thing. I see. That was why I'm like, wait. So he found it there. So I'm guessing he had to have found it when they got there before that first scene because it didn't really. And I was kind of thinking at first, I'm like, do we need to see a scene of Jonathan stealing it from him? No, but do we need to see a scene
not necessarily.
of him finding it? And I'm like, again, no. It makes sense why he has it. I'm just more like, what? Why exactly does he have it? Not just location wise, but regardless, he basically says, well, he's trying to. Evie's asking me. Actually, he realizes Jonathan's the one that took it from him, and he punches him. And then Evie just steps over Jonathan to keep asking him questions. And she's like, "Can you tell me how to get there?" And he basically grabs her and kisses her and says, like, get me out of here. And like he'll take her. And this was the hanging scene. And
Yeah,
she is trying to like offer the guy money
she's
to
trying
get
to
him.
yeah she's trying to negotiate with the
And the
warden
warden is really
and
stupid. And he's
yeah
like, she's like 10% of whatever we find, like 10%. He's like 30 50%, 40, 30, and he says 25, and she's like, ah, deal. It's like, you're
yeah
stupid. She
he lowballs himself in his own
and
negotiation.
but he did like the like he like the very like with the gesture of his hand, like 25, like that's final. And she's like, ah, deal. And he realized I'm an idiot and then cuts him down. And then
Yeah,
so I want to make note that this was I don't think I did I say already where it was shot. It was shot in a couple different places. uh Arizona, England, and Morocco. They couldn't shoot in Egypt because I guess, unstable political conditions. That's what I saw read. And
yeah.
I don't know.
There were a couple. Oh
No, I
no, no,
mean,
no,
like, I
go
don't
ahead.
know where Arizona. I don't know what scenes in particular they were shooting at Arizona, but England, it was the port. So when they're leaving for the trip, and Nile, air quotes the Nile, like all of that was in England.
Yeah.
Morocco was, I think, the desert. And apparently, I read this was on IMDb. Apparently, the production had the entire support of the Moroccan army, and the cast had kidnapping insurance taken out on them.
That's right.
And the
Yes, they
director didn't
didn't tell
tell them
them.
this until after, which good because I'm assuming it wasn't horrible conditions because they all came back, but the fact that
He,
there was the director had concern that I have a bunch of white people out here, I might want to get kidnapped, which I didn't even know that's a thing.
I
Kidnapping insurance.
well, I think it was just
That's
kind of like an extension of like a life insurance policy for like that movies
yes,
have to take that involve like potentially dangerous stunts. And I think it was just some
yeah,
like weird extension to that was just very like location specific for them. But yeah, I do remember that. I remember watching this on AMC, and they were just randomly throughout the movie, they were just putting up like random blips and facts throughout it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that was one of them
yeah.
that popped up. Is like he put out like an extensive life insurance policy on the entire cast and didn't tell them.
I mean, damn, like
It's like
yeah, that's
that
funny.
is
AMC.
hilarious.
That's funny. AMC is how I saw this too. I think I actually saw the second one first,
I think I saw
and
the
or
second
I
one
saw
first.
parts of the second one because what happened was I like I said, my sister and I grew up watching George of the Jungle, and then the third Mummy, and which I didn't know that was the third Mummy. I just thought this was a Mummy movie, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, that
Oh,
one,
okay. It's
and
like wait,
and
what?
Journey to the Center of the Earth. Both of those came out they came out within the same year. I think they came out like around the same time. And my sister's like, "Hey, it's that guy from George of the Jungle," and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's funny." And then I think we came across the Mummy movies, and I think I saw them out of order. I saw the second one first, and then or I saw parts of the second one, and then I saw like I think I saw parts of the first one, and then I remember for my birthday that year, that was my 13th birthday, and I asked for the Mummy movies. And I really just wanted this. I wanted all of them, but I wanted the second one in particular because that one I go back and forth, which is my favorite, the first or the second. But I got my friend got me the first one, and my parents got me the third one. I'm like, I just really wanted the second one. The third one is, I mean, it's fun, but it's really bad.
Yeah.
It didn't need to happen.
Well,
That
at
was
least
really it.
it's not Tom Cruise mummy bad.
No, that one was that one's pretty. That's way worse. Um,
I like how there's just a scale system of worse, good to bad mummy movies, and that's at the low end.
I mean, yeah, but it was pretty bad. So, um, they end up, yeah, going. They're traveling down the Nile, and they're on this boat, and we kind of find out really why Evie wants to go to Hamunaptra because I guess she is looking for the Book of Amun-Ra, which is the Book of Life, and it's made out entirely out of gold. Well, actually, I love this dialogue between them because he's not really a Rick's not necessarily a treasure seeker, but he's like Jonathan more cares about treasure, and whereas Evie more cares about artifacts, and Rick's kind of somewhere in the middle. He's not really for or against it. But at this scene, she's saying like, "I've been looking for this book. It's why I came here. It's a life pursuit of mine." And he says, "Oh, and the fact that it's made out of pure gold, you don't really care about." And
Yeah, it
she's
means
like,
nothing to you.
"You." And she's like, "You know your history." And he's like, "I know my treasure." And the thing is, he's not that into treasure. Like Jonathan is the one in the group. It is kind of the cliche. Like you got the heroic one, you got the smart one, and you got the sidekick who does unintentionally help them along the way. Like Jonathan has knowledge that does he does know how to read and write ancient uh, Egyptian, but not
Egyptian.
to the
Yeah,
degree of Evie.
yeah. Like
But
he's able to like read
yeah,
the inscription on the book of Ra, or I forget the
Amun Ra,
Amun
yeah.
Ra. There we go. Yeah, he's able to read that and more or less kind of like come up with like a clutch win at the very end. because
Yeah, and like in the second one, he has the scepter that he has the scepter the whole time that we then learn that is what's going to defeat the Scorpion King. Like
yeah,
I mean, like they each are but like I said, Rick is kind of just in the middle. He does have some knowledge. Jonathan probably has a little bit more knowledge than him when it comes to ancient Egypt, but Rick isn't like obsessed with treasure to the
yeah,
degree that
he
Jonathan is.
yeah, he's definitely like the
But
kind of
he
like
did view it
yeah,
as treasure, the book as treasure, not as an artifact, the way Evie does, which I find is kind of interesting.
yeah,
It's an interesting contrast between their characters. And this is when we find, but actually, before then, while we're on the boat, there are a group of Americans we've already described who are also looking for Hominoptera, and they say that they have somebody with them who's been there, and it's Benny, who like I can, you know what, like after what Benny did, like Rick immediately wants to kill him,
yeah. It's like,
and
well,
he's
if it
like,
ain't my
oh,
buddy Benny,
yeah, and he's like, "Oh, so what? You're gonna just leave them out to there to rot?" And he's like, "No, they paid me half, so I have to go the whole way to get the full payment." And he ends up just, throwing him overboard,
yeah,
which is the least he deserves. We then the Magi, I guess, sneak aboard the ship. We see them like rowing towards the boat,
yeah,
and
and one of them has a hook for a hand, and he's credited as Hook.
and this is okay. So this scene, Evie is so becoming transfixed with, because she asked Rick, like, why did you kiss me? And he's like, I mean, I was about to die. It seemed like a good idea at the time, which I feel
And it's
like is
like
such a
that's a
dude answer.
that's
Like,
a yeah, in my yeah, like coming from a guy like that's a fine answer. I accept that.
I don't think that that's, he doesn't know her. He just, she is pretty. He thinks he's about to die. I mean, you shouldn't kiss someone that doesn't want to without their consent. But she is also so becoming transfixed with him, especially because of when we first. It's funny because she's on the way to the port. She's like, he's rude and a complete scoundrel. I don't like him one bit. And he also had his long hair and he looked crazy. And then he shows up and his hair is shorter and slicked back and he's hot now. And she's like, oh,
Yeah, he's
hello.
like all clean shaven, and it's like, oh, yeah, yes, he's a total scoundrel. And then like as she's like kind of like getting ready, she's like super distracted. She's like kind of like reading, and then like mumbles, and then she's like dropping her book and her like clothes on her hanger and her brush, and just being super klutz, and then eventually just like slams her books like, oh, get a hold of yourself. It wasn't that good of a kiss.
Like she's so transfixed by this guy and the kiss, and this is when the hook guy, I don't he just sneaks into her room very quietly, asking where the key is. And Rick, after she leaves to go to bed, he sees wet footsteps. I'm just surprised he was talking to Benny, I guess, when they snuck on. I'm kind of surprised no one noticed this. I mean, it must have been that very quiet. I don't know, but
I mean, they're wearing all black. That's the sneakiest of all colors.
it makes you quiet, and
Yes, and
yeah.
it's scientifically proven that if you wear all black, that you will be undetectable, and if you wear all red, you will be the fastest person, because red is the fastest color and black is the sneakiest color. This is science.
um yes, exactly, yeah. And so this is, yeah, so Rick saves Evie, and then I and there's the scene, I guess they added this right like a couple days before they shot it. It was Rick is putting like, uh refilling his gun, and bullets are shooting like lining the wall just next to him, and then Evie pulls him out of the way just as the last one's about to hit him. And I guess Jonathan goes looking in Evie's room for her, and he, the guy is set on fire. The hook guy is set on fire. He reaches for the Jonathan reaches for the key, and then the hook guy gets it. And then later, when he jumps overboard, he's about to fight Jonathan. He's about to come after Jonathan because he's the reason he got set on fire because he bumped him.
Yeah,
And the Americans shoot him,
just
and
like
then
shoot
he
him like eight
suddenly
times.
and then Jonathan suddenly has the key. And I kept going backwards because I'm like, wait a minute, did he didn't get it in the
I
room.
think he,
He
I think,
like
I think he, yeah, he picked it up off the ground like after
no
they shot
he
the guy.
well, okay, because I think we didn't see that. That's probably
Yeah,
where he got it, but we just see he didn't have it, and then he suddenly had it, and I'm like, it had to have been this scene, but it didn't show it, and I was like, wait, he has it, okay. And yeah, so they all go overboard, and I guess Evie's wearing her white nightgown, and apparently it was see-through when it was wet, and they had to digitally paint it white to keep the PG-13 rating.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
And this is I
I
mean,
just thought it was like really thick, like cloth, so that it wouldn't be see through.
I didn't think about it, honestly. I was just like, oh, she's wet. I didn't really think it
Yeah.
should be see-through or not. But this I one of my favorite jokes in the whole movie is Benny, everybody on the boat is on the other side of they're all on the other side of the river, and Rick, Evie, and Jonathan, and the warden who decides to go with him to get for his investment are all on the other side. And Benny screams, and they're really far away. It's amazing that they're able to hear each other. But he's like, "Hey, O'Connell, it looks to me like I got all the horses." And Rick's
Hey,
like,
Benny!
"Yeah."
Looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river.
But there's, you know that let me find it. But you know that meme of like the guy like, I may not do this, but when I let me find it because
The most interesting man?
maybe, and it was like I may be on. It was like I may have all the horses, but when I do, I'm on the wrong side of the river. I'm like,
Yeah.
that doesn't make sense. Wouldn't it make more sense to say I may be on the wrong side of the river, but when I am, I have all the horses? Wouldn't that have made
I, I,
more sense?
I, I don't know. I never plugged a meme into the mummy before, so I don't know where this line of questioning is going.
Okay. Anyway, um,
It was just a funny line of
yeah.
dialogue. I never put that much thought more into it.
All right. Fair enough. It wasn't the dialogue; it was the meme that I thought didn't make sense.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
I
Anyway,
I have no idea.
anyway, so they set out the next day on camels through the desert to get to Hamunaptra, and I guess it's like shown like the sun literally just barely at dawn. Literally, the city just appears.
Yeah, it was like a kind of like a mirage. Like you kind of had like that you know how like when you like look down a road when it's like really hot and you kind of see that like heat lines, like it just kind of like that shimmer effect. It was basically
Yeah.
like the entire city was just covered by that shimmer effect, and it can only be seen during like the sunrise, and that's how they all were able to see it during the day, and how they couldn't see it until that point.
So they make a bet with the Americans, with the other group, that first one to the city, blah blah blah, and okay, camels are better in the desert than horses, and so they are acting kind of well. But Benny says, hey, O'Connell, nice camel," but he also was on a camel, so I don't really understand what the point of that burn was. But anyway,
I don't know.
and they're all racing, and Benny is using his whip and hitting O'Connell, who then just grabs him and throws him off his camel. And
It's like, yeah, serves you right.
Evie as then takes the lead and gets to the first through Hamanatra. And I love this scene so much because for her, this is like the biggest thing she has ever done in her life. And also consider it's the 1920s and she's a woman and all that stuff. But like, I I don't know. I love this scene because even if like they didn't find anything, this still would have been like the best thing ever for her. I want to do that so
Oh yeah,
badly.
that would be amazing.
I want to go to Egypt.
Do-
I want to ride a camel and have my and
oh,
with my Evie
I was about to
Carnahan.
say, you want to race a
No, I
camel?
want to ride a camel and have my Evie Carnahan experience. That's anyway. Uh,
I want to race a camel against Brent
right,
Fraser to
yeah,
a deserted
that's
ruin.
specific. That's
That's
specific. That's very specific.
that's on my bucket list.
Um.
Check.
So. Yeah. They
They
get to the
set up
city.
camp
Yeah.
in Hamunaptra, and like the Americans have like it's like all of them, and they have like 15 diggers, and they're all kind of like going through like kind of like the main like closed off entrance, and then we have like our like group, and it's just Rick, Evie, Jonathan, and the warden, because he's there to like protect his investment because he wants to make sure he gets his 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're like setting up these like mirrors, and like Rick asks like, hey, what are these for? It's like, oh, it's like an ancient Egyptian trick. It captures the sunlight and it bounces off all the mirrors in the hallway so we can see where we're going. And it's like, oh, that's actually like a really
Yeah.
cool way to explain why they have like all these stage lights in there so that like there's actual like proper lighting in these tunnels. But I remember them testing this exact same like lighting method on Mythbusters, and it does kind of work. Like it doesn't light up the room like it does in
The
the
way,
movie. It
yeah.
just more or less kind of like it more or less just kind of lights it up so like you can like see like where the walls are so you won't like bump into anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you also need to adjust the mirrors like every few seconds because the sun moves, so you have to keep adjusting the angles of the mirrors so it keeps capturing the sunlight.
Yeah.
And they do, and you never see them do that. So it's like, okay, I guess suspension of disbelief. They just have someone on mirror duty just realigning the mirrors every 5 minutes.
Mirror duty.
And it's like, Jonathan, you're on mirror duty. He's like, I was on last time. Do
I
it.
mean, Jonathan wasn't really doing anything. They were like, he was playing golf with like rocks at one point while they were digging.
Yeah, that's how you live your life, playing golf in a deserted ruin with rocks.
Um, and they're, they realize they're in a preparation room and they're walking around and they come across the Americans and their Americans are being jerks, like, hey, this is our dig spot and blah, blah, blah. And Evie realizes like there's more to the room. There's somewhere underneath. So they decide to go somewhere else. And
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, they decided to dig like directly under the statue that the Americans are at. It's like, oh, we're just gonna steal the prize like right up from under them, and then they accidentally knock down Imhotep's coffin that they or sarcophagus that they didn't even realize was there.
mhm. And
And
they are about to open it. They realize we need a key. Oh, it's the key from the hook man was talking about. And they're about to open it when they hear like the warden screaming. And so before he goes off like picking, he sees like these like stone jewels on the wall, and they're scarabs which dig into humans and like crawl through them and like kill them, eat their
eat
brain.
them.
It's gross, and it's it's pretty horrible. They don't know what's going on. They just see him running and he runs into a wall and he dies, and that's it. And they're more
Yeah,
like shocked, but they don't they're like they're like they're shocked, like, oh my god, what the hell was that, but they don't really like him that much, so they're not really affected by his death.
yeah, like immediately, like the next night after he
Or they
dies.
think it's that night or that like
Yeah, yeah,
the end of
yeah,
the
yeah.
day.
Like the
Yeah.
end of that day, they are rifling through his belongings, and like O'Connell, like before that, O'Connell says like, "Hey, we weren't the only ones who had like misfortune. Apparently, three of the diggers were like melted by like this pressurized salt acid booby trap, in one of the chambers that they were digging in." And you do see that happen. They're like trying to like remove this slab with like a bunch of like these like crowbars and pry bars, and a bunch of this salt just like shoots out like immediately in their faces, and it's a really cool effect actually because it's from what I can tell, it looks all practical. Like they just had um like just like all these like various like burns all over their forearms and hands and
Yeah.
face, and it looked really impressive. I was very uh surprised by the level of like brutality in that scene. um but yeah, they rifle through his belongings, and earlier on you see him put like a couple like the scarab like casings like in his bag, and Jonathan like it's like you hear him like yell because like something like bit him or something, and like he freaks out, and like Rick like grabs his gun and points it at the bag, and it's like, oh, it's an old bottle, and like the top of the bottle's like all chipped and cracked, and they all start drinking
And
and get
it's good
sloshed.
wine apparently.
Yeah.
And this is when there's commotion at the other camp, and the Majive showed up because they're, beginning this dig where they don't want them to find Emotep.
Yeah.
And they basically, and they've been kind of at odds with the Americans. And after the, and Ardith Bay basically says, you have to leave, get out of here. You have one day. And this is when they decide to like kind of team up with the Americans. And I guess so. Everybody's fighting, and Evie like wants to be more of a fighter, I guess, and she like grabs a gun and starts like she like screams and like shoots somebody, and Jonathan and Benny are both like Benny grabs the wine from Jonathan and starts drinking it
Yeah,
during
it's
this
just really funny because Jonathan's just kind of like chilling behind a pillar and just like drinking from the bottle and just
and shooting.
kind
Yeah,
of very casually just shooting at the Magi on a horseback, and then Benny just like runs up and just starts chugging it, and then they get charged at by Ardeth Bay, um, who then like starts fighting Rick, and he pretty much puts like the entire fight to a standstill by lighting this very like comically large wick on a stick of dynamite. It's like, all right, well, I guess this fight's over.
yeah,
And
and
yeah,
yeah,
and then later that night, after like Evie, like he like Evie kind of like collects herself. She gets like drunk and is kind of like learning just like punching and like boxing with Rick, and it's like she kind of explains like her family, which we kind of talked about earlier. Um, and then she says like, "Oh, like O'Connell, like I want to kiss you," and like as she like leans in to do that, she immediately like passes out, which I thought
yeah.
was really funny because it was like they had like the music is like, oh, this is like a very like touching and like romantic moment, like they're actually like becoming closer together, and then she's out.
Yeah, he the thing is she becomes transfixed with him earlier in the movie and he doesn't start to like kind of be more into her until uh so she loses all of her clothes during the raid on their ship and has to get new ones. And she's wearing more like traditional like Egyptian like woman like clothing with the dress and like the like veil covering part of her face,
Yeah.
and that's kind of when he's just like, oh, becomes more like attracted to her. And then later they I really love them. I think they're a really I love watching them. They got good chemistry. They're kind of adorable because they bring the best out of both, and they each put something different on the table. And it's and as the movie goes on, he gets really protective of her, but it's and it's adorable. And but it's also it's not just because like she can't take care of herself and she's not capable. He knows that. It becomes more of no, he just cares about her and doesn't want her to get hurt.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is when she says like, I'm not a treasure seeker or I'm not an adventurer. I'm proud of what I am, a librarian. And then well, she is a
Yeah.
librarian though,
I
so
just think it's just she the way she announced that is like, I am a librarian. It's just really
yeah.
funny.
So yeah, the next day they open so they find Emotep's sarcophagus and the Americans find the
This cursed chest.
what are those things called? I forget what they're called.
They're canoptic jars.
Yeah.
They're
I had
they're
to
they're basically like jars that they put like your vital organs in when you
yeah.
die for like a ceremonial death.
I had to in 6th grade we were talking about ancient Egypt and I had to mummify a piece of chicken and like not like I had to like take out their organs. I had to like a piece of chicken, like I had to mummify it and like I had to wrap it in like it wasn't bandages, it was like pieces of paper and glue. And
Nice.
I and had to make like a sarcophagus. And so I made those like things, those little things. I just didn't know what they I forgot what they were
Yeah,
called. But like
yeah, they're like canopic jars or something like that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, later on they just kind of call it like sacred jars, or like
Yeah.
even Imhotep just says that. but yeah, they open it up and they find that like it's like wow, Imhotep's body, he's like still decomposing after all this time, and he scratched something into the roof of his coffin, or I keep calling it a coffin, into his sarcophagus in ancient Egyptian
Yeah.
that says death is only the beginning, and they realize with that and all of like the fingernail marks that he was buried in there alive. And they later confirm this again for themselves when they find a bunch of scarab skeletons, and they just kind of explain what scarabs can do to you. Um, and meanwhile, the Americans, uh, like as soon as they pull out the chest, like all the workers freak out and they all leave, and eventually so does Benny, because the Egyptologist is reading like death will befall under anyone who opens this chest, and of course they open it, and in it is the Book of the Dead, and the Egyptologist is super excited because this is an amazing find.
Yeah.
And then like the Americans are pissed, like, oh, we don't care about a book. Like, where's the gold? Where's the treasure? And they one of them kicks a box, and then they find the jars. Like, all right, yeah, there's a bunch of jars. There's one for each of us. All right.
Yeah,
So
that's why Emotep goes after them because they have
Anoxen
so
pulls organs.
yeah, they have his organs and they have the jars. That's what
No, no, no. These are for Anoxen Amul.
Anoxunum. Okay, well that's Anox.
Yeah.
Well, they they opened it. They have something that he needs, but he doesn't. He's not as interested. He's interested in Evie because that's his sacrifice, and Rick and Jonathan are trying to prevent him from sacrificing her. But he's not as interested in them because they didn't steal from him. They woke him up.
Yeah, they awoke him.
And Evie then she sees like the Egyptologist is trying to open the book without the key, and she realizes she's like, oh, I think you need a key for that book. And then later when he's asleep, he takes it, and she takes it, opens it, and reads it, and wakes up Emotep. And this is when the Egyptologist is like, no, you mustn't read from the book. And then the locusts come. They all go running inside. But what I thought was weird, so they all go running inside. A couple of the workers die, and the Egyptologist is just sitting there, and I'm like, what is it like? What is it like a devil's snare thing? If you don't move,
No,
they're not
I
gonna
mean
bug
for the
you.
most,
Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess he was just kind of like so freaked out with like what happened, and he knew that it was like, well, there's no way I'm gonna outrun this. I'm terrified. He was just kind of like frozen with fear. Was what
okay,
I guess was the reason behind that of him not wanting to move. Um,
okay,
yeah, but it was also like I was very surprised seeing like, oh, the locusts swarmed and ate the workers. Like locusts don't do that. It's like what? What? These must be magic locusts. But then they left the Egyptologist alone, even though they're all swarming all over him, and they're the actual real locusts are actually like crawling over all over this actor. And it's like, oh, that's dedication, dude. I wouldn't do that.
he apparently it took forever because he couldn't keep a straight face with all of them just like crawling on him.
I couldn't either. I'd be
Yeah,
like grimacing and cringing and just like, oh, there's a bunch of creepy crawlies all over me.
and they all run inside, and uh, first of all, though, they lose the glasses guy who he falls and his glasses
Yeah.
fall off, and
Ah,
Benny
jinkies.
steps on him. And then this part actually gets really. There's a lot in this movie of not of. They were really great with the element of surprise and building up our first, other than him first waking up, our first real viewing of the mummy. And
Yeah.
he like hears someone and he doesn't, and then he turns around, and he thing is he's the one with the worst eyesight. So I'm curious what he's seeing that made him scream so much.
Probably just like a gray blur and then nothing because his eyes get removed probably almost immediately.
Yeah. And Evie, Rick, and Jonathan are kind of wandering around, and then a bunch of scarabs break out from the ground. They go running, and Evie ends up falling through this like kind of
False
trap,
wall.
false wall,
Yeah.
and she sees the. So it's Mr. Burns. That's the guy,
Yeah.
the glasses American guy, and she sees him, and his eyes and tongue have been ripped out, and then she sees
The
Emotep,
mummy.
the mummy, yeah, and Yeah, he calls her
Yeah,
Noxuna Moon, and
yeah, and yeah, they kind of go through like the whole like, oh, like this is like my one true love, like you're an Mule, and then Rick and Jonathan are like trying to like find Evie, and they're like trying to kick and push on the wall that they think she fell through, and then the other two Americans are like running by them. It's like, run, you sons of bitches! Those scarabs are after us, and they run, and we said before, like Rick like tries to save one of the workers, but he can't because the worker is
yeah,
already dead, and then they find the mummy, and Rick like immediately like shoots it.
I love this
It's
part
like,
just
what
because
the heck?
they find Evie, and he's like, "What are you playing hide and seek? Like, come on, we gotta go." And then he's like, "Whoa!" Like sees the mummy, and then the mummy like, like
Yeah, it
growls at
roars
him,
at him.
and then Rick just does it back. He goes, "Ah!" and screams, and then does it too. And he does this later in the movie too. And but he shoots them, and then they all run, and then the Magi are out there saying like, we told you to leave and you wouldn't, and now you've just woken up the
Yeah.
mummy, and they all
Also,
get out
that is probably like the weakest "I told you so" moment ever. It's like, we told you so. Like there were zero consequences. Like, all right, you just released like the like ultimate evil. We're gonna let you guys go. It's like, all right, sweet.
Yeah, I love
It's
like
like, yeah,
in the second one where they're making fun of a lot of the things that happened in this one, and they keep making fun of the whole like, oh the old wipe out the world ploy, like how's
yeah.
that old move, like
It's like, oh,
yeah,
that's very original. Which like I kind of liked that kind of like meta joke of just
yes,
like,
I agree.
but yeah, they let him go, and they haven't found Benny, and Benny is like running through the like basically like catacombs, like trying to get out of there, and he stumbles upon Imhotep, and Imhotep just like slowly is like very menacingly like walking towards him, and Benny like keeps pulling out like all these different religious like symbols and starts
Yeah,
like praying in different languages for each one, trying to like, I guess, like appease him and get on his good side. And he's like, he pulls out like a cross, and he pulls out like,
something in like,
I couldn't even
it was a
I couldn't even
Buddha, I
recognize like
think.
half of these. But yeah, he eventually like holds up like the Star of David, and then Imhotep like recognizes that language of like
Hebrew.
ancient, yeah, like Hebrew, and it's like, oh, it's the language of the slaves, because basically like the Jewish people were like slaves of the pharaohs. And it's like, oh, I can have use for you, and it's like, if you like work for me, the reward will be great. And he like holds out like a handful of like gold and jewels, and it's like, where are the other sacred jars? And he holds like the one broken one that the Americans left, and then it cuts to um, everyone leaving, and
Yeah,
him just the iconic scene of just like him busting his hand through
yeah.
the ground.
So Rick tries, basically there he's saying, okay, well, you know what, I'm not involved anymore. You guys hired me to take you out and bring you back. I've done that. We're done. I'm done. And he's trying to like get help. He's trying to get Evie to leave. Like, this is not safe. You need to go. And she's like, no, we woke him up. We have to stop him. And he's just doesn't want to be involved anymore. And he goes to the bar, and we meet Winston, who I guess was a pilot who
Yeah,
really wished he
he
died
was,
in World War I.
yeah, he was a World War I pilot who's like really bitter of the fact that he didn't go out in a blaze of glory with his friends, and is like really bummed out that it's like, oh yeah, I'm just spending all my time lavishing in booze and women's like, and then he's very clearly like drunk because he like walks through a fountain, and is just like, oh, some poor fool spilled their drink there. And he's just like very bitter with the fact that like this is his life now, that like I was like, oh, like all I have in life is all this like alcohol. And it's just, he's a really funny character, even though he's only in like a total of 3 scenes.
Yeah, and he is, yeah. And he was entertaining, and it was more funny that he wished it was sad, and it was funny because he like wished he was dead. And later when they go get ask for his help, and Rick's like, well, you probably won't live through it. He's like, really? You think so? Like, we just not, and it's not like he hates his life. It's just that he, I think, wants to go out with a bang.
He wants to go out like a Viking. He wants to
Yes.
have like he wants to go out and battle.
Yes. And
And
yeah.
I mean, like, spoiler alert, he does eventually get his wish. And it's also really weird. He's like the character who gets like the least amount of development, but he gets like the most like honorable death in this movie.
Yeah.
Because like they they eventually like crash, and I guess like he like died in the crash. Like his heart either gave out or like he like broke his neck in the crash, and the plane or like the main body of the plane starts sinking in quicksand, and they have like this really like kind of like fitting like instrumental kind of music
Yeah, as he
of
sinks.
it. Yeah, as he sinks, and like O'Connell like salutes him as he goes down, and it's just like, why is this character who has like the least amount of screen time getting like the most like respectful scene out of everyone in this
Yeah.
movie? I just thought it was really funny. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love Winston, and I wish that there was more of him in
Yeah,
this
I wish he
movie.
was in the movie earlier, but there wasn't really a reason for him to be in there earlier.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm happy with what I got. I wish that there was more, but I can't think of a reason why he would be in there more.
Unless maybe, I don't know, like we had a scene with him and Rick like on at their like as they're like before the port or something, or they, I don't know, like he's getting a drink. They're at like a bar or something, or some kind of watering hole. So if it was something
Yeah,
like that and he just says like, I don't know, that it could have been something like that. Yeah, it wouldn't have been like a big important scene. But yeah, this is when we meet Winston and the Americans. Everybody's basically taken off, and they all come in here for a drink, but they spit it out. Oh my god, what's wrong with it? It's
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 blood.
blood, and I do love this scene because Rick drops the shot glass, and then it's like blood, and then Jonathan's reciting, and the rivers ran red and were as blood, and because it's the first plague,
Yeah,
Emotep is there, and we see him in Mr. Burns's room, and he again, this guy has his eyes and his tongue ripped out, and he has bandages
yeah,
covering his eyes, and Emotep basically comes so he can kill him and
yeah.
take the rest of his
But
like stuff.
I also just I really want to quickly just kind of like point out the absurdity and the unnecessary like points of this scene. So
Because
basically,
why didn't he do it in the first
the
place?
yeah, like the room is like the scene set up of like Mr. Burns is like having tea with Imhotep, who he like Benny's in the room with them, and he's like basically like translating, because apparently he can understand ancient Egyptian, um, which was a thing that was kind of weird and never explained. But anyway,
Yeah.
he's like
Or
saying
no, he's
like, oh yeah,
speaking.
like please don't touch Prince
Right.
Imhotep. He like it's a silly like super Eastern superstition. I'm afraid. Like, does he not recognize that that's Benny's voice? Like this is a person that you know. Like how does he know like a prince, and why would there be a prince that wants to see him? Uh, and also like the fact that Imhotep is like wearing a disguise. He's wearing like some like like a metal mask, and is like wearing like these like very like
Like Victor Von Doom kind of
ratty
outfit.
yeah, like these like dark like creepy robes. Like, wait, this guy is blind, why are you wearing a disguise like right now? Like I understand you need a disguise to like get in there to not raise suspicion, even though you can just kind of teleport like a sand dune in there. It was just, there's so many like weird absurdities of that scene of just like, why go through all this trouble? Like no one can kill you. You can just catch this guy. He's blind and has no tongue. You have those
I
things.
think I think I get
It's just really
that's a
weird.
I mean fair point. I definitely I I agree mainly with it would have made a little more sense if he did this the first time. Like take his eyes, tug his tongue, and then just like, because that
Suck his
it could have
soul.
been it could have been the same kind of like fear of like, because Evie gets into that room and she's like, oh, Mr. Burns, I thought it was just getting scared, and then finds him dead. It would have been the same, like, oh my god, like it was. I agree with that, but that's for the mask and the robe. The only thing I can think of is him getting in and maybe getting
Yeah.
out. But also, what I thought was weird is he takes his mask off and the guy screams, and it's like, you're blind, you can't know. I'm
Well, he's also freaking out because
yeah.
Benny just says like, "Oh, Prince Imhotep would also like to thank you for your eyes and your tongue, but but he must finish the curse." So he's like, "No, please, no!" And then he starts
No, I get that,
screaming.
but the
So it's like
scream,
it's a natural progression.
I
I
get
feel like.
that. I just thought the scream was like in sync for when Emotep takes the mask off, as if he was screaming at his face, which I agree. Yeah, he's probably screaming because he's about to be killed, and I fair enough, but it was
Yeah.
more the timing of it. With the mask taking off, seemed like he was screaming at his face.
I mean, I feel like it was a pretty natural reaction that coincided very well with the
But
actual
I guess he
scene.
did.
Yeah, I didn't have any
I
issue
guess he
with
did
it.
have to take the mask off to suck out the whatever from the guy. So
Yeah,
I don't know. It just was the timing. But I
yeah,
agree. Yeah, he
yeah.
probably it was probably just the he screaming. It made sense. It was just the timing of it. But anyway, so yeah, Rick goes looking for Evie, and then this is when like fire is like raining down, and they they find Emotep starting to regenerate, and they see a dead Mr. Burns, and
Who's just a husk of a body now. Like
yeah,
it's just like a very like he looks like what a mummy should look like without the bandages.
yeah, and they all, and then I just love that everybody shows up, and then there's a cat in the room, and he
Yeah.
freaks out, and then they go to the museum curator, and Ardith Bay is there, and they learn, oh, the curator is also part of the Magi. Were trying to protect. They didn't want the creature to wake up, and now, and I just love like Rick's just like, question, why doesn't he like cats? Like just the way he
Yeah.
asked, and he's like holding up like a finger,
Yeah.
like uh and it's apparently because cats are the
Yeah.
guardians of the underworld, and he's not fully reformed yet. So until he is, he's gonna be afraid of them.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Which is like, okay, that's a good reason.
yeah,
Like, I kind of like the fact that they did kind of give him a weakness that they can exploit right now because
yes,
they straight up just say that like, oh yeah, he's immortal, like nothing can hurt him because it's 1920s. The only like thing that they have like direct access to that
guns,
could do any major damage are like machine guns and like
yeah,
all these guns, which they all clearly have and is having zero effect. So it's like, okay, there's nothing that we can do to stop him if he just decides to jump us all at once. Like there's literally nothing that they can do to stop that. So we need to have. I'm really glad that they did decide to give them some kind of defense or to protect themselves against Imhotep. Otherwise, this would have been an incredibly short
yeah.
movie.
I agree. And this is when Evie says, uh, at Hamanoptera, he called me a Noxuna Moon, and just now he tried. So right before the cat, he tried to kiss Evie, and they say, "Oh, you're gonna be his human sacrifice." And it's like, oh,
Even though apparently that wasn't a needed thing earlier in the movie.
and what was he gonna stab before? He was just gonna stab the air,
Yeah,
or Hanaxuna.
I'm gonna stab a Noxamoon's corpse, and that's gonna bring her back to life.
And
Yeah,
they all, this is when, yeah, he creates, I guess, an eclipse, another plague, and everything's dark, and they're basically all sitting around trying to figure out like who opened that chest, like what do we do here. And Rick immediately
yeah,
takes
we got to do a head count of like who's left.
Rick immediately takes charge and locks Evie in her room, and he like grabs one of the Americans. He's like, this door stays locked. She doesn't go out. She doesn't come out, and no one goes in. Right? And he takes Jonathan, and Jonathan is just very. I love this part because he's throwing Evie in the room, and she's like, Jonathan, and he's just like, oh, I mean, he's like big and like strong, like he is not at all. Your sister's being turned into a human sacrifice, and they're
It's
trying to protect her, and
like, no,
he's
I'm
just
gonna chill
like,
here.
I mean, yeah, you should just go. And then Rick's like, okay, Jonathan, let's go. And he's like, oh, I think I just stay here. And it's like, my God, Jonathan, what?
It's like Jonathan. It's like, oh, okay, we're
And
going.
they're trying to look for the Egyptologist who has one of the sacred jars. And he's like running around the city, and Emotep's right on his tail. And Benny is also, you know,
ransacking his office, trying to find the jar in case he doesn't have it on him, which we later on learn that he does.
And Rick
Um,
throws a
yeah.
chair at Benny, and Jonathan's like, "Oh, nice shot!" like wow. And he's trying to,
I mean, it
yeah,
was. He like hits him like right in the back of the knees, and he just
it
crumples.
was like it was really impressive. And he's just like trying to get information out of him, and then yeah,
But I really like the way that they're interrogating him. He's just holding him up and just holding his head near
a,
like this like apparently like really fast and high powered ceiling
yeah,
fan because it sounds like a spinning blade. Like you hear like the like a bunch of like blades like swords are getting like sharpened on like a whetstone, that like metal
mm-hmm.
scraping noise, that like sing sing,
Yeah,
like yeah, like that weird noise. And he's like pretty much just like gets the whole thing. Is like, oh, it's like, what's he doing with the jars? Like, oh, he needs that to like resurrect his girlfriend. It's like, why does he want Evie to resurrect his dead girlfriend? What does he want with the other people to resurrect his dead girlfriend? It's basically just
because
like, this is the only thing he
they each
wants.
have what a jar, and he needs all the jars.
Yeah.
And they hear a sound. Betty punches Rick and then jumps out the window, and we see Emotep with, and he's just killed the Egyptologist and has the other jar. And now he like opens his mouth, and a bunch of like the flies come out.
Flies.
Yeah,
Like,
and he goes, yeah,
which I guess counts as like another one of the plagues.
yeah, I guess. Yeah, I agree. It's not very
I
clear.
don't. Yeah.
Uh,
It's very unclear because like a lot of the times Jonathan is just saying as like, oh, like this is one of the plagues. Like he like quotes like something like from a a Bible, like the
yeah,
Bible or something, and just quoting this. And then he doesn't do that for a while, and then you see him's like, and finally, my last but not least, my favorite plague. And it's like, so wait, this is the last plague? What happened to like? Because he only does this for like 3 or 4 plagues throughout the movies. Like, wait, you said that there were 10 plagues, and yet you've only quoted four
yeah,
of them, and I've counted like the others. So like, eh, please
yeah.
explain.
Uh, yeah, I don't really have anything to defend that. Yeah, and he goes right for so the Americans are still guarding Edie. One of them decides to go down and get a drink, and he's like, "Do you want anything?" And the other one's like, "Yeah, give me bourbon and a shot of bourbon and a bourbon chaser." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll
And
get you damn bourbon."
yeah, it's like, yeah. It's like, okay, your damn bourbon. And then he's like doing like a quick draw on like his jar, and then he hears like a something coming from like the window, and then Imhotep just swarms him, still in like this like sand, like like
I
misty sand kind of like thing, and you just see like the shadow of the American's body just like
Until
flailing
it's just
around
bones.
and just becoming thinner and thinner and being like drained and just thrown against the wall. And then Imhotep just materializes, and it's actually the actor. It's not
he
just
it's
the
like partly his,
monster.
yeah,
It's
like it's
most
his,
of him.
it kind of just more looks like something's on his face. Uh, but yeah, I love
Yeah,
this scene because yeah, you're just seeing the silhouette of the guy being drained of his skin and whatnot.
yeah. It's so
I
satisfying to watch,
I agree.
honestly.
It's like really satisfying. Um,
I mean, as morbid as that sounds, it is very
it's well done.
satisfying because you do see him like, yeah, it's such a really fun and interesting scene to watch that. And then he like walks over to Evie's door, um, and as he's walking by, you just see like the husk of the American that's left, and instead of like busting the door open, which is something that he can clearly do, you just see like this like a bunch of like a small bit of sand just pouring through the key lock, and it just builds into like this huge pile of sand, and then he just materializes out of that, and it's like,
Yeah,
that's a really cool thing. I feel like it's a bit theatrical and unnecessary and kind of time consuming because it's pouring in
yeah,
very slowly.
yeah.
um
And then he kisses her.
but and then he gives her a little
She's
smooch without
she's
her
asleep.
consent. Hashtag
She's
me
asleep, and
too.
then wakes up, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's gross. A uh guy that's not fully reformed, a dead guy who's not fully reformed, is kissing her. It's pretty gross. And then they break in with the cat, and then he runs away.
And yeah, he turns into sand and like busts through the window. But the way that they shot that is they basically just shot a huge amount of sand into the room, and then they just played
Oh,
that footage backwards.
it worked out. Huh.
Yeah, I would have hated being in that room when they blasted all
Oh
that
yeah.
sand in there.
Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, after this, like pretty much like everyone in like Ardit Bay, the curator, and everyone in like the Last American, they go to the museums. Like, all right, we got to find a way to kill this thing. I'm the last one. If he gets me, then there's no stopping him. Um, and
and
they're
yeah,
like
and
trying to look around
they
for yeah.
basically they realize the books were mixed up because they're like trying to figure out. And actually, first of all, they see he's Emotep's kind of sort of entranced and enslaved everybody because they hear like an army of people with like pitchforks and spears and
Yeah,
swords.
and they're all just like very like mindlessly like droning on about and just
Emotep,
chanting. Yeah,
Emotep.
Imhotep, and it's really cool because you just hear like this like drum beat going off like after every time they
Yes,
say Imhotep, and it's just like, oh, that's good. I
yes.
really liked it. It was like very like intimidating and like foreboding. It's like Imhotep, boom, Imhotep, boom. It's like it's ooh, I'm getting
I
hyped.
totally agree. My right before my sister left for college, she was watching all the movies that she wasn't going to take with her, including The Mummy, and it was like past midnight, and I walk by her room, and I just hear emo tap, and for a split second, I was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's The Mummy." But yeah, uh,
No, Imhotep and his army of mindless minions were outside your house
oh yeah, for sure. And yeah. Um,
because he's there to swallow your
and
soul.
then they're trying to figure out where the other book is because they were I forgot, was it they
Yeah,
were mixed up or
the no
intentionally mixed up so
the
people wouldn't figure out where they were?
no the Pembridge scholars mixed it up in their research, which I don't know how they even knew that those were even things that existed in a city that they thought was made
Well,
up.
no, she knew. Evie knew the Book of Amun Ra, so I don't think that's weird. That I think it's just all.
No, she literally says in the museum scene the Pembridge scholars mixed up the books in their research, and so if the book was here, then this book needs to be here. And she says, and it's like, ha, take that, Pembridge scholars. And she literally says that the Pembridge scholars made the
Yeah,
mistake, which kind of brings into question how did the Pembridge scholars even know that the books, these two like thought to believed fictional books were in this location of a temple that everyone, including the museum curator, was made to believe didn't exist. It's like that's like saying I know where like the Trident of Poseidon is in the lost city of Atlantis. Like there's nothing to back that up. Like there's no like major research without proving the fact that that city
but
is
I looked
real.
at it more as like I was thinking more of like hype. Like, let's say the city is real, and these artifacts that we are unsure of if they're real. I get what you're saying, but I kind of thought of it more as like if it's real, they yeah, how would they have known? I guess is the real question.
Yeah, because it's never explained like how the Pembridge scholars
Okay.
knew that it existed unless like they were also part of the Magi and they were just using their inside knowledge to get a like an academic one up on everyone, which I feel like the Magi would have just immediately like killed them for doing that.
Yeah. So okay, I get what you mean. I just like interesting. I don't know. That's a fair point. I got that's a fair point. But regardless, they mixed up the books and Evie's trying to figure it out and realizing, okay, well if the book of the so they found the let's be clear because I've seen this movie a bunch and then I realized I was even getting mixed up. There's the Book of the Dead and the Book of the Living. And the one they found is the Book of the Dead, which gives life, and the Book of the
Which
Living, which is the book
yeah,
they're looking
which is
for,
kind of a
takes life
weird.
away.
I kind of like that kind of like yin yang kind of juxtaposition between the
Yes.
two of them. It was really confusing
Yes.
watching this as a kid because I could not comprehend that.
I understood like, oh, the book. I understood like it was more if you knew the opposite of the books. It was more just the confusion of like, so wait, the book that they just found. It was more the confusion of which is the book of the life and which is the book of the dead. Because it was more confusing on wait, this book gives them life. This book, it's literally a line of dialogue in the second Mummy, and I'm assuming it's because people were getting confused. They literally say the book of the dead gives life, and the book of the living takes life away. And she figures out that, so yeah, this book was in the statue of Anubis, where the book of Mun-Ra was supposed to be, which meant that the book of Mun-Ra was in the statue of Horus. And she's like, take that, Bembridge scholars. Like, she's just so excited. And Jonathan goes out to get the car, and he comes across the mob, and he panics and just starts pretending to be one of them, going
Yeah,
Imhotep, and just like
they
joins
they
in.
all they all kind of like follow suit, and it's like that is the smartest, dumbest thing I've seen, and it's so idiotically brilliant that I actually have no complaints for it.
It's kind of like, I mean, I don't know, like in Return of the Jedi when Han Solo literally just taps the shoulder
Oh,
of
this yeah.
one of the guards and then runs the other way. It's that same kind of. It's so innocent that it's brilliant. But for here, I wonder, like, if he had just did, as long as he wasn't running at them and been an obvious enemy, would they have chased him, or if he just
I
like
think
stood
I think
frozen,
because
like
Imhotep had never really had a reason to directly kill Jonathan. He was mainly just after like the American and Evie. Like everyone else, just like I kill
yeah,
them. I guess I don't know. Just kill whoever's in your way, and he just like, oh, he's one of us. I don't think like the mindless slaves had much uh room to complex thinking at that time. Like they were pretty much
yeah.
just like mind controlled and just like if they were given any complex orders other than one word commands of kill and find, I think you could get away with a lot.
Probably. Probably. So they all get in the car and they're driving away, and then the mob pretty much surrounds them. And they stop, and then Rick just literally slams his. Jonathan's driving, but Rick just slams his foot on the gas, and they just run down these people. But some of them like jump into the car and are like they're like
Yeah.
throwing people off. And the American is shooting and gets thrown out of the car and is shooting all these people, and then he runs out of
Which,
bullets.
which
And
I actually really
Emotep,
like that scene of just like after he falls off and is kind of like backed in a corner and he just like just firing nonchalantly at these people that are charging with like all these swords and knives, and then after a while he just like click 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 click, like he's still shooting even though nothing's coming out, and you just see like everyone just like standing there not moving, like making no indication that they're like a direct threat to him, like by like not like charging him, but he's just like, oh shit. Like he just has that like, oh, I'm
yeah,
going to die face, and then Imhotep comes by and they open up for him, and then like the American like reaches into his pocket and like hands him the jar, thinking like, oh, like hopefully like this he can take and he'll let me go, and then yeah, no, he just basically eats him.
yeah. And the car, what did the car hit? The car hit something. They all get out.
It hit like it hit a fountain because
Yeah,
there were so many people on the front windshield that they couldn't really see where they were going.
and they all get out and they're surrounded. And Emotep, well, okay, so Emotep basically says like to Edie, like, come with me, and or it's time for you to make. He's like, it's time to make you mine forever. And Benny's translating, and Evie's like, for all eternity, idiot. like she knows more than him. Like, shut up.
She's correcting his ancient grammar.
And then he's like, if you come with me, I'll spare your friends. And she's like, okay, well, I gotta go. And Rick does not want to let her go. And she's like, no, he's got to take me back to Hamunaptra. And Ardeth Bay is just like, yeah, live today, fight tomorrow. And
It's like that's good
I
advice.
really love Ardeth Bay. Like, he's a, a badass,
He's very
but
he's very underrated in this movie.
he's
I feel
super
like
underrated. And he's just like, he's kind of like the. It's a little like his role is kind of like a monk. We don't really know much about the job other than that they are descendants of pharaohs and they're super loyal and sworn to protect.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah.
apparently really bad at their job.
I mean, they kept no one discovered it for like 3,000 years.
Yeah, but they then let the one guy who knew about it go away unharmed when they. It's like, oh, we'll just let the desert like kill him. It's like,
Oh well, yeah.
why? You can just kill him now. Also, they never explain how Benny got out of there.
I mean, well, Benny, I guess, just locked barricaded himself and then just opened it when he probably hung out there for a little while and then just waited until everyone was gone. But yeah, that makes why would they have fair enough. Why didn't they kill him? As for Rick, I don't know. I think it's just because yeah, he's there, but he's leaving. It's not like he's like wandering. He's unarmed. I think it was just he's an innocent bystander. Like let's just let the desert kill him, and the desert didn't kill him.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the reasoning of like, oh yeah, there's no way he can get through this desert without dying, but it just feels like the risk of, but if he gets out, then
Yeah,
he could tell people where this place is that we are sworn to protect with our very lives, and it just makes it's like it's one of those situations of like kind of like a bad guy. I was like, oh, don't you want to know if like the hero survived or if the hero died? It's like, no, I just want to assume that it went off without a hitch, without any visual confirmation. It's like,
yeah,
dude, you can just do it right now.
yeah. There's this. I didn't finish it. It's on Hulu. It's a show called Reprisal, and it's more of like it's basically this woman who was part of this gang and she's left for dead and she's seeking her vengeance and like has this like plan to like get her revenge on them. And there's this whole part where she basically says like they didn't even bother to check that I was alive. They just assumed I was dead. And it's more of like they assumed she was dead because she's a woman. It was more that aspect, but like if they had been smarter aside from that, if they had been smarter, why not just double check to make sure she was dead? But yeah, it's same thing. Like it's yeah, if they wanted to be extra safe, because they do say when they go to the curator and Evie's like, so you think that this is justifies killing innocent people? And they're like, yeah, it does. So
Yeah.
I guess,
So just like it makes no sense on why they didn't just like, yeah, let's just be sure because we've been doing this for 3,000 years and we've had a pretty spotless record up to this point. Let's keep it
but I
that
also
way.
kind of like, yeah, it would have made sense, but it's they assumed he would have been dead. Fair enough. They should have to be safe, they could have just killed him. But I kind of like that idea
Come
of
on, you got to double tap.
if
You got to
they
double tap.
if they had killed him, none of this would have happened. That one little I those kind of little details where if this one thing didn't happen, none of this would have happened. And I they it's either lazy or it's like oh my god, it's either lazy or it's exciting. It's one of the it's interesting for the story because it's something that could have been gone drastically different. um anyway, so yeah, Artifact's super underrated and he's like saying no, we have more time, just let her go. And then of course Emotep decides to you know no, I'm just gonna kill them
It's
all.
like, oh yeah, 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 kill him anyway. So they managed to Jonathan, Rick, and Ardith Bay escape through like this like storm drain, and the curator stays behind, like holds them off, and he eventually dies. And they like the next morning they make their way to the airfield with Winston. It's like, hey, we need you to fly us to Hamanoptera, and you'll probably die. It's like, oh really? Well, let's go.
Yeah, he's so excited.
And um they tie up Ardith Bay and Jonathan to the wings of uh
The
the
plane.
the plane, and Rick's just kind of like in the back seat with like the gun. It's like, all right, we need to go there, and they're more or less like following like this like dust devil, which is basically just like a sand tornado. And Winston's all like, "You see that? I've never seen one that big before." And it's later revealed like that's Imhotep, and he's carrying both Benny and Evie. And then he creates this giant sandstorm with his face on it, and it's chasing Winston and the plane and the whole crew. And Brick's firing his machine gun in it, and it's just he's just shrugging it off. He's shooting a sandstorm. Like, you can't kill that with bullets.
I love
Um,
this scene because
so
I will say, Jonathan and Ardith Bay are both, they're so strapped to the wing, and they're both equally my reaction. Jonathan's just like, Rick's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Do I look okay?" And Ardith Bay is just like grinning, like he's so excited. This is like the same moment in the Mummy Returns when they're fighting the corpses on the bus, and at the end he's like,
yeah,
"This was my first bus ride."
that
Like, that he's just so like, he should be more terrified, but he's so excited to to be just riding on a plane like this. And yeah, the Emotep, Evie, and Benny land in the desert, and they're back at Hominoptera, and she sees the plane, and Emotep, of course, is trying to take it down by with his like sands. I don't know what would you. He's like controlling the
yeah,
sand.
it's just a sentient
Yeah.
sandstorm.
And she's like, "Don't, you'll kill them." And Benny's like, "Yeah, what's the idea?" So to distract, she kisses him, and it just gives them enough to get out of the sandstorm. And she's all excited that she helped, but then she sees the plane crash land, and she looks immediately like disappointed. It's like, you still saved their lives. Like, you don't have to look so disappointed that they didn't land with the grace you would have liked. Um, they then, yeah, this is when Winston dies and sinks down in quicksand in his plane, and they make their way into Hominoptera. And I guess in this scene, so there's rocks that are lining the, like, they're trying to move all these rocks to get inside, and the actor John Hannah is, I think he's Scottish, and so as they're like, he's saying, "No, take some from the top, put your backs into it," and it like, it's briefly for a second you could hear his Scottish accent.
Oh, I
It's
didn't even
really
pick up on
slight,
that.
like it's not that big a deal. It's it's more like a funny like, "Oh, haha." But yeah, Emotep's trying to prepare to sacrifice Evie, and I always forget about this scene. It seems like the scene where he has these other corpses like come out of the wall, and
Oh
they.
yeah, yeah. Well, but before that,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Jonathan finds like one of like the scarab things on the wall that the warden picks up earlier, and is like, "Hey chaps, you better take a look at it." And the scarab like breaks out of that casing and burrows into his hand and up his arm, and basically is trying to do the same thing that it did to the warden earlier. And like Rick or Brent Fraser basically like stops that and just pulls out like his like butterfly knife and just like basically like skewers it out of it and then flicks it across the room, and then for some reason decides to shoot this beetle that you could just smash with the
Oh, I
rocks that
didn't
you've
think
been
of that.
doing without alerting your position. He pulls out his gun, shoots it, and now like Imhotep knows he's there, and then he resurrects like all his priests that have been buried in the walls for some
Yeah, I
reason.
get. Yeah, they could have used the rocks, but also, I mean, if a gun is a guaranteed way to kill it, and these things are assholes and they are hard to kill. So I agree that it did give away their position, but in the moment, it was probably the better option because what if the rock didn't work?
I mean, I mean, it's a beetle and they have a torch. I mean, there are other options available that they could use to kill this one singular
Yeah.
scarab. Like, they had knives, they had torches, they had rocks, they had their shoes. I mean, yes, we saw like a beetle, like a scarab, like burrow through the warden's shoes earlier, but I mean, if you step on the the top of its head, like I don't think it can burrow
Yeah.
through its own skull as it's caving in
I
on
mean, okay.
itself.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I felt like there were plenty of other options that would have not given away their position.
Yeah. Okay. I never really thought about that that much. Yeah, he sends these other like creatures out of the wall to go get him, and I always forget about this scene, and it's like this is just like their fight before they even get into the ritual room, and Ardith Bay ends up just like separating, saying, go get her and kill the creature. And I do love the scene. So he Jonathan finds the book, and he's like runs into the ritual room like, Evie, I found the book. And of course Emotep's then like, oh, the book, yeah, I need that, thanks, and running towards him. And we see Rick get a sword from another statue and then breaks her free, and he's got this whole weird fight with them with these mummies, and they
The
try to throw
Oh yeah, and
like a slab of
the
stone on him and crush him.
yeah, okay, yeah, but before that, when he's like he first like attacks like these mummies, this is probably like the weakest part of the movie for the CG on
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of CG. Like story, it's fine. Like the choreography is fine. It's very clearly he's very clearly shadow fighting right now with like mummies that aren't there. I don't know if there's like actors there that are kind of just there there for like composite doubles for people working behind the scenes so they can kind of have a frame of reference of where the mummies are and how they're going to move for the most part. But it's very clearly you can very clearly tell that he's not really fighting what he's actually fighting in the movie. He's just fighting we're supposed to think he's fighting, and it's just it looks very hokey and fake. And it's really like the only time in the movie where I felt like the CG did not age well.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it does kind of look a little weird. It's not like, yeah, it doesn't. Some, I mean, we've established a lot of this CGI holds up pretty well. This is one of the ones that doesn't.
Yeah, this is honestly like the only this is honestly like the only scene in the entire movie that I can think of that
Yeah.
did not hold up. Like the rest of the CG in the movie is like there are times where it's a little like rubbery looking or a little like glossy, but this is really like the only time where it doesn't hold up because it just looks very out of place.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is fine.
So yeah, we get this whole fight scene, and basically Jonathan needs the key to open the book, and these other Emotep sends these other like, I don't know, warrior fighter.
No. Jonathan accidentally reads something on the front cover and basically resurrects these guys, but Imhotep can control them because Jonathan didn't finish the inscription.
Wait, that's what? That's what happened.
Yeah, yeah. Jonathan like read like a phrase on the book, and then like immediately after that, these like basically like mummy warriors show up in like full formation, and then Imhotep gives them a command because he's the one in, basically like he has like magical powers now because he's fully resurrected,
Okay.
and because Jonathan didn't finish the inscription, they wouldn't abide by his commands. They only abide by his commands because he finished the inscription that
Okay,
initially resurrected
because
them.
I I always thought he was like trying to figure out what was going on. I thought he was trying to read it, figure it out, and then that was just irrelevant. And then when she says like, do something, Jonathan, he's like, what can I do? And she's like,
Yeah,
you can control them once, like, read the inscription, then you can control them. And I'm like, how is he supposed to know that? And I realized, oh, well, now that makes more sense because he's the one that,
yeah, because yeah, because he didn't finish the
yeah.
inscription in the first place.
um so it then becomes like, and then a Noxuna Moon starts attacking Evie while Rick's fighting all of these guys. And I love this scene because I love, there's like, it's exciting, but it's really fun. Like Rick's just running away from these mummies that are trying to kill him, and he like, it's not as like a tension filled scene. Like this is an adventure movie at the, and that's just what it is. Like it is
Yeah,
purely fun. And I love, this was that other scene where he like screams at them like, ah, and then they do it back, and he's like, nope.
yeah, he's just like trying to intimidate. Yeah, but when they scream, their like mouths extend like far larger or far longer than like should
Yeah.
actually be humanly possible.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, it's like as soon as that happens, he just immediately like books it in
And
the other direction.
um so the fight ends. He's basically like they're all on him. They're about to kill him, and then oh wait, no. So this I almost skipped. So Jonathan's trying to finish the inscription, and Evie is running away from an Moon, and he's like, Evie, I can't figure out this next symbol. What does it look like? It's a bird, a stork, and it is a metaphus. And it's just the same joke happens in Mummy Returns. That same like, oh, huh.
Yeah,
And I love that.
I know that one.
I
I
don't
know
know. I
that
always really
one.
like that joke, and I thought the Mummy Returns is a really solid sequel because it makes fun of itself a little bit. It does do some of the same jokes, but it doesn't like go overboard. It's just a very, I think it's a really well done follow up to this movie. Um, and anyway, so finishes the inscription, and actually he figures out it's a metaphus, and she's you know being choked by a Moon, and it's like all this stuff's going on, and then he's just like, and Johnson's just like, oh yeah, I can, oh yeah, I see that, like he's just like there is no pressure, and he finishes the inscription, he stops the mummies, has them kill a Moon, and then Emotep goes after him, and Rick cuts his arm off, and he Jonathan gets the key.
Yeah, and what while yeah, while he's choking Jonathan, since he's like a master like sleight of hand and pickpocket, is able to swipe the key from his robes and open the book for Evie so she can find the inscription to kill him. And she, yeah, when she opens the book, she's all like, Caddy smile, paradus," which is probably like the easiest
I
thing
know.
to read.
I
It is
know.
literally just two words repeated
The fact that we
twice.
remember it is,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, I also watched it last night, so it's like it's very fresh.
They brought on an Egyptologist to try to help them phonetically because, ancient Egyptian is a dead language. We don't really know how it sounds. And they actually, like, the fact that they put in so much effort to make it sound not like gibberish or anything, but an actual language, I don't know, like, I applaud that. Like, that's a lot of effort. And
Yeah, they put in a lot of effort for something that probably not a lot of people will like generally pick up on or
no.
necessarily care about.
And then uh so yeah, they have the key, they're opening it, and Rick is being choked, and he's turning purple or like a blue. Like that is how
Yeah,
strong Emotep is. And
yeah,
uh,
yeah, that's a detail that I generally like did not note, or probably didn't. I don't think I noticed it until I like rewatched it last night. I never knew that his face was turning purple.
and so I guess the underworld, like a character from the underworld comes, and they take, you see like
His soul.
it's like his immortality, because you see Emotep, and but you don't really know what's going on, and they don't know what they're seeing, and Rick's like, I thought you said this was gonna kill him, and then he stabs Emotep, and he's mortal now, and he falls into this, there's water, there's like a, I don't know, water source in there, and he falls in,
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean, it's like the same water source from like earlier where a Moon's soul like jumps out of to jump back into her
yes,
body
yes,
when.
yes,
So I just assumed it was like like the well of souls or something like
yeah.
that, or like some kind of like passage to the underworld.
And then during this whole time, Benny is getting gold from when Jonathan, Rick, and Ardith, they come in, there is this room filled with treasure, and Benny's been just going back and forth and getting treasure from the room. And I guess so there's a scene he's trying to put it on like a camel, and I guess he
Yeah.
struggled a lot with this because the camels for some reason did not like him. They just like did not want to oblige, and he keeps going back, and then
That's super weird. I never knew that.
like they just did not like this actor. They for some reason, I don't know what it was, and then he on his one of his trips he sets his bag on this like there's like this like
This
arm
like
sticking out,
lever.
yeah, and it turns out to be a lever, and the whole thing starts to collapse, and so they're all racing to get out of the city, and Jonathan drops the book and it lands in the water, and Evie goes back like, you've dropped the book, like, oh, and they have to pull her away, and then the same thing happens when they get to the treasure room where Jonathan's like, can't we just like,
No.
yeah, and see, right, yeah,
Because this whole time he's like, oh, like where's the treasure? Because this place is supposed to hold like the treasures of Egypt
yeah,
and all the pharaohs, and it definitely delivers. This entire room is just wall to wall covered in like gold statues and piles
it's like
of
the Cave of
gold
Wonders.
and jade and jade statues. It's just amazing.
And this scene, so yeah, they're running, there is like a ceiling that's starting to come down, like it's gonna crush them, and Benny is like just behind them, and Rick is trying to help him, and he has been nothing but an asshole. He could just leave him there, but no, he still makes the effort to try to help this guy, and he's not able to because his arm is literally about to be crushed, and he's like, bye Benny, and they all escape except for Benny, who's manages to crawl out of that space. He's in a room full of gold, and then scarabs, and his flame, his
Yep.
like his torch is going out, and then
You just hear them all
yeah,
swarm and him screaming, and it's like, well, that's a fitting end for the most irredeemable character in the movie.
and then they're like rushing out of the city. It's everything's falling over and collapsing, and then Ardith Bay, I guess, somehow got out, and he basically says to them like, "Thank you" and whatever, and he takes off. And then it's kind of cheesy, and then at the end, because Jonathan's just like, "Oh, we go home with no treasure and empty-handed," and Rick's just like, "I wouldn't say that" to Evie, and even I appreciate it's a very meta joke because even Jonathan rolls his eyes and is like, "Oh, please," like that's so lame. And then they kiss, and they are on their camels, and we see that there's some of Benny's treasure that he took,
Treasure was on the camels that
so
they're
they don't go
riding.
home empty-handed. And I actually love this scene. It's probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, the very end, because the music, and they're like on the camels going traveling off into the desert with the sunset. It's just a,
Yeah, walking off into the sunset. It's just so iconic and picturesque.
and yeah, exactly. And then the movie ends. Um,
Yep.
I love this movie so much, and I got into it when I was in like middle school. I found it. I came across it. I think that's when the third Mummy and Journey to the Center of the Earth came out, and that's when I started. I didn't really watch that Journey to the Center of the Earth, but I just that's when
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser was kind of like becoming more of like, oh, this guy.
Yeah, I definitely started watching these at like a much younger age than you probably. I think I started watching these probably like around like maybe like fifth grade or something like that, like fourth or fifth grade. This was just like something that like we would always watch in like our DVD player and like our like minivan whenever we were like driving to go see our grandparents out of town, and it was just something that I always just associate with like long road
Yeah,
trips. And it's always going to be connected to like those like childhood memories, and it's one of the reasons why I love the movie so much is because it is a very nostalgic movie, but at the same time, it's also a really good movie. It's a very satisfying, like swashbuckling adventure movie with like elements of like horror and romance, and it's a really solid movie that aged very well aside from that one scene that I pointed
mm-hmm.
out. But even then, its worst scene still holds up as good, if not better, than most scenes in like these CGI filled like schlock fests, like the new Mummy.
Yeah. um, yeah, the new movie is just so bad. It's a fun bad. It's a really good bad movie. Actually, no, it's not a good bad movie. It's a dumb adventure movie, and it's terrible. But it's super entertaining. But it sucks. But it's entertaining. That's how I view it. Um, so Kevin, is there anything about this movie that you think is real?
Um, I don't think that this movie would have gone on the way that it did, because I think I kind of said this before, of if the Magi were really like hell bent and as loyal as they were to make sure that there were no like leaks of information about this whatsoever, then they wouldn't have been so like cavalier about the idea of letting the desert kill Rick, and just have killed him themselves, just so that they would have like 100% like confirmation that they don't have to worry about this guy potentially leading more people to Hamanoptera.
Would it have made sense if there was more of a reason why they didn't kill him? Like maybe they I don't know, they accidentally got involved in that battle and Rick saved Ardeth Bay or something like that, and then he kind of feels like, you know, I say
Yeah,
something like
if
that.
they yeah, if they had done that, or if they like showed that like, oh, like they respect like him as like a warrior or something, so like we will not kill you this day. And since I don't know, if they had given like more of a reason as to why they didn't kill him, rather than, nah, let's just let the desert kill him. I'm feeling lazy today. I didn't bring my gun. It just it made it seem like they didn't want to do it because they did felt like they didn't necessarily have to, when at the same time they definitely 100% had to kill him.
Yeah.
It's like if the end goal is make sure Rick is dead, then why leave it to chance with the desert and just kill him yourself? There's like, even if it's like you guys are like the top like leaders of the Magi and you can't risk any of you guys being killed, there's still like 8 of you on horseback and he's unarmed. You can
Yeah.
take him. So yeah, like, if aside from that, I feel like the movie did progress at a natural pace and still kind of went at a normal. Uh, I think the movie, the events of the movie still would have gone on the same way they did as they were presented. It's just that one scene that kind of irks me.
Yeah, I actually feel like I I never really gave that much thought that scene. I do agree that there could have been more of a reason, and if they gave more of a reason, then it might have been that also would have been a little more interesting. We would have seen a little bit more of Ardith Bay's character. But I kind of feel like aside from that, I mean, for me, it's more of these tiny details where I'm like, wait, how did this happen? Why does he have this? I think it's those details that I found myself like questioning more. But a lot of the actions and the need to we woke him up, we have to put him down. I actually felt like there was a lot of realistic things in this movie. It's all obviously unrealistic, but I feel like there's a lot of things about this that are I found very realistic, even despite the fact that it is a mummy being woken up and you know
Yeah, I mean, aside from all the
the
magic and all
obvious.
that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Aside from the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. Um
But yeah, was there anything like that necessarily like stood out to you as like there's no way that this could happen because that's not how real world works?
um nothing's really coming to mind. I think my only thing was more of yeah, I don't think anything coming to mind. I think the only thing is I could think of, and it's again, I love this movie, so a lot of these things I feel like I can just whatever. They're not
You
things that
you,
irk
you,
me.
you can you can sweep it under the rug because you have nostalgic blindness.
Yes, like I didn't have
Okay.
this. I've seen movies where they rub me the wrong way, and that's just all I see. Even if I really enjoy it, there's just things about it that bother me. And there's even times where I'll watch a movie and it'll be a movie that I really loved, and then the more I watch it, the more I'm noticing its flaws. And this movie, I'm definitely noticing some flaws, but it's nothing so horribly story things that hurt the story that I have issues with. Um, I do agree it would have kind of made more sense if he had completely killed Mr. Burns at Habanoptera as opposed to just taking his eyes and then going to Cairo and then killing him. As
that
yeah.
was kind of a weird decision.
Um, but other than that, nothing is really coming to mind. I'll watch it again.
But yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend this movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
yeah, it's also just like the perfect like summer movie. Like this movie just
Summer or
screams like
Halloween?
what?
Yeah, summer or Halloween. I guess
Oh well,
technically
yeah,
with a
because
mummy.
yeah, it's just like it just seems perfect. It's like, oh, they're in the hot desert and they're just constantly like out in the sun, and it's just like, okay, this is something I need to watch during the summer because like I don't know, it just kind of has like that like extra layer of like immersion when you watch it in the summer because like you're like
Yes.
like you're like hot and sweating because it's summer, and it's just kind of fun kind of watching movies that kind of have like that weird sense of like immersion with it.
Yes, that's this is my ideal, like my favorite type of, one of my absolute favorite types of like genre wise, because uh I I tend to I love like adventure and action adventure, but I love that it's set in a different time period, because then it really immerses you and really takes you out of like, it's really, and it makes it an extra escape. But also, I'm not from the 1920s. I don't really know a lot of whatever. It just to me adds to the intrigue of it all. So yeah, it adds to the immersion. So um yeah, I it's definitely a summer movie. I it's one of these
Yeah,
movies I can watch it at any time of the year. I just can't. I just don't. Like it's only like in the summer do I like really need to watch it. It's really bizarre. Um yeah, but I absolutely yeah, but we both love this movie. I got excited when I found out we both love this movie because we have very different tastes, and
yeah,
we both, there are a couple of movies and a couple of franchises that we both really really love, and this is one of one of
yeah.
them.
There's surprisingly very little overlap in terms of movies that we both like unanimously agree on across the board.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm more like inclined to like watching like horror and like sci-fi and like stuff like that, and you're more inclined to like watch stuff like
This
I,
and
I'm like actually trying. I'm actually trying, kind of just trying to describe like your movie taste. Like
I don't
how would you
have a
describe?
specific genre. It's more of like, it's just the way the story is. Like, okay, for me, for example, like with horror, as long as I don't want to be like afraid, like I have nightmares, but as long as I feel tension and suspense. And like one of the things I loved about it was, to me it was like kind of a mystery or like an adventure. Like they're on a mission, they got to do this. Like that's the kind of stuff that I like. And so the genre doesn't always matter. It's more of the story, if that helps. Yeah, I know. I'm all over the place. I don't have a specific genre that I love or hate. There's more just stuff that I tend to not be as interested in.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah, I'm definitely like more inclined to like watch something if it has a good story, but I also like have like like guilty pleasures of like watching just like shitty movies for the sake of watching them because they're just entertaining to watch. Like I enjoy watching like really bad cheesy like horror movies because those are just like in my opinion like horror movies are probably like some of like the easiest movies
Yeah.
to make, and it's really hard to make a
Yeah.
good horror movie, but it's really easy to make a fun horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to watch that one with Greg Sestero, the like college one. I
I
don't know what's called. The one
I
that's
don't know.
it's like shot in Chico or something. Or was the guy? Let me look at it. It was the, I don't
Okay,
remember.
I don't know.
You were the one that told me about this movie.
Oh, I don't remember. This is starting to freak me out.
Come on, internet. Uh oh my god, this is gonna bug me. I will find
Well,
it and
yeah, hopefully we'll figure it out sometime soon. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm Kevin Tracy.
And I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
And you've been listening to Movie Reel. See you next time, folks.